Hey everyone, the community reaction series on this channel has been one that so many of you have loved, so I decided to put it all together in one ginormous video. Now, I did this mainly so that you guys could see the progression between the games smoothly, as when I was making the individual videos, it might have been harder to see since they were so spaced out. And I think it's a really important part of this equation that I couldn't touch on in my individual videos. So, for one last time, thank you all for your support on this series, and let's get right into it. Hey everyone, do you remember the first ever Zombies mode back in 2008? Well, I certainly don't because I honestly probably didn't even have a functioning brain. But that's besides the point. World at War was the first ever Call of Duty game to feature our beloved Zombies mode, and it arguably could be seen as one of the most innovative games in the mode's entire history. World at War Zombies laid the foundation for the revelations and shattered veils of our modern times, and although the gameplay and map mechanics were very simplistic, without them we would not be where we are at today with the biggest Zombies map ever in Ashes of the Damned in Black Ops 7. Anyways, like literally any other video game that releases in the modern era, World at War had large community discussions at the time surrounding the game, which had been catalyzed by the extreme rise in popularity Call of Duty had been experiencing following the release of COD 4. However, this community was going to experience something for the first time that no other Call of Duty had put into the game, and of course that was zombies. And well, this was a pretty significant change. So in this video, I thought I would look through the community's reaction to World at War Zombies through the lens of the people that had actually been a part of its launch and development, and look at the discussions and mainly theories that these people had at the time to see how interesting and smart they actually were. So without further ado, get strapped in because we are going 17 years in the past, back in time to the initial release of World at War Zombies. Now, as I had planned this video, I had immediately realized that, well, finding information like this wasn't just going to be as simple as a click of a YouTube search, as of course this stuff happened back in 2008 and is going to be pretty difficult to find. So I took to searching, and this led me down a long rabbit hole of finding super old gamer FAQ sites that used to be extremely popular, where people would discuss questions or certain topics they found appealing. And of course, Call of Duty was one of the most popular games that was being discussed around this time, and because of it, there was a lot of chatter about the Zombies mode in the game almost immediately after its announcement prior to the release of the game. Some of the first comments I saw about this, however, was actually that of extreme distaste, which can be seen by this pretty nasty comment made by this individual, practically threatening the developers of Call of Duty for even thinking of zombies. How dare they, right? It's so unrealistic. I mean, like, seriously guys, come on, zombies. This of course was not the only comment about this topic, but honestly, contrary to popular belief, at least according to my research, the Zombies mode was viewed as more of a skeptical point rather than a point of contention by the majority of the online community, and many were intrigued to see what the mode could offer rather than blatantly hating on it. There were plenty of comments at the time actually expressing their excitement for the mode, such as this one who said that the zombies was just another reason to buy the game, and this guy who said that it would make it different from COD 4 so he would be excited for it. I was very surprised seeing this. Mind you, this was before the actual release of the game, and somehow these people found out about the zombies mode, but it was met with very positive praise after its reveal. There were even people such as this guy who were defending the mode. As stated earlier, the main argument at the time was that zombies was quote-unquote unrealistic and would not fit Call of Duty, but this guy points out that, well, how realistic is it that people fight against each other in closed off areas or play capture the flag? So overall, I would say that Zombies was a pre-launch success. But of course, the Zombies mode would release, and for the first of a mere 2 times in its history, Zombies was locked behind the completion of a campaign, which many had actually done already, so it wasn't as big of a deal back then as it would be now. There was initially a very big spark of popularity, with many asking others what their highest round was, which I found to be so interesting to look back on because these people were getting to like rounds of 13 and calling it a record. Back then though, it was a big deal, and even for myself, getting to some of these rounds nowadays in that World at War engine is no walk in the park, let me tell you that. Pretty quickly though, people began to theorize, and as the zombies community still does to this day, people came up with a bunch of different questions that of course had not been answered up to this point. One of which was this question that asked if completing the zombies mode was even possible, and to which many responded with the correct answer and no, but there were some other outliers that were trying to be mysterious, I guess. One thing I wanted to point out here though is the vocabulary many people were using at the time. For instance, instead of the mystery box, I often saw people refer to it as the random box, and for the concept of rounds, people would instead use the word levels. This honestly is the most minute detail, but I think it perfectly exemplifies the true youth of this mode at the time, even through the DLC cycle up to Darius. As more said DLC began to release for the mode though, the zombies in the game only seemed to increase in popularity, and I noticed a pretty stark contrast of zombies posts compared to the days of Nocturne Totem. With the new DLC however came new story plots and theories, and as the zombies community does, they theorized. One of the more interesting ones that I think encapsulates the collective unconscious about the story at this time is by this post that is asking why in the world these characters we see and introduced in Shinonuma were working with one another in the first place. And well, this is a very valid question, especially for the time, because the only context we have is that it's during World War II, and generally these four parties would not be working with one another this closely. However, here's where the theories came in. Blah says that he thinks that the Japanese soldier, aka Takio, doesn't mind killing his comrades because they are zombies. And yeah, I guess even to this day I really haven't thought about how the ethnicity of the zombies plays into the character's personal care for killing them, but of course ultimately I don't think this point is that big of a deal. There was this other response that provided a background as to why he thought they were there, essentially saying that Nikolai was from Verrückt and would apparently steal food from the Germans. Interesting. He also said that Takio worked at Shinonuma and Richtofen worked at Verrückt, while Dempsey was said to have been the savior of people at Verrückt. Now, of course, this theory quite literally has absolutely no validity behind it. In fact, the only aspect of this theory that ended up being somewhat right was the fact that Richtofen worked a little bit at the Verrückt facility, but that was about it. But truthfully, this is what the zombies community at the time had to work with. There was no super interesting lore deep dives on YouTube or little ciphers hiding around each and every map. There were little bits and pieces that had to be formed together by the community to come to a conclusive answer, but that was about it. This question was another one that was asked by an individual that caught my eye, which was a question about how the Hellhounds were actually created. Again, another very valid question to ask that we wouldn't really actually know until the release of Darius, but some of the answers weren't actually too horrible here. Like this guy, he said that Element 115 is what was causing all of the problems within the storyline, although he did say that a meteor crashed and hit the plane we see in Nocturne Totem, which is just not true at all, but I mean he was pretty dead on with them using it to experiment on people at Verrückt and whatnot. Then there were other people that were just saying it was the T-virus from Resident Evil, which I found to be pretty funny, but the theorization hit a peak point when the final DLC for the game, Darius, released to the public, and let me just say this is one of the most theorized times in the zombies story and its history. For starters, there was this actually really good theory that I came across that I actually kind of had to do a double take on, because let's face it, the majority of the theories at this time were either completely wrong or were pretty obvious. But there was this one that said that the Wunderwaffe DG2, which had been introduced in Shinonuma, was actually inspired by a real-life concept made by Nikola Tesla. Now, if you aren't familiar with Nikola Tesla to any degree, Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American engineer and inventor who made significant contributions to the electrical field in the early 1900s. If you haven't heard of him, well, he's got a whole car company named after him, so that's gotta mean something, right? Anyways, if you delve into his past, you will actually find some pretty interesting information, one of which being this test he was conducting that made remarkable claims concerning a quote-unquote teleforce weapon. Now, let me just take a direct quote from this comment that cited another website and just see if it sounds familiar to you to any extent. Quote, it described an open-ended vacuum tube with a gas jet seal that allowed particles to exit, a method of charging particles to millions of volts, and a method of creating and directing non-dispersive particle streams. Yeah, pretty crazy, right? I mean, this quite literally sounds like the Wunderwaffe we see in the game, and it is kind of crazy to think that at some point so long ago, someone was thinking about creating a weapon that would act pretty similar to the Wunderwaffe in a sense. But now I wanted to look at this theory that was developed by this guy that is absolutely massive, but let's cover the key points here. He goes over Peter McCain first for some reason, so we'll start there. He says that he believes that the hangman in Shinonuma is Peter, and he's spot on. It's just the small details that got him here because, well, Peter McCain did not get his arm chopped off by some dude when they were fighting over whether or not they wanted to turn the power on, and he also says that for whatever reason, Nikolai is at Verrückt. I don't know exactly why people were so keen on Nikolai being at Verrückt, but hey, I guess it was a thing. Oh wait, never mind. He says he was at Verrückt for a vodka addiction. That totally makes sense. He also refers to Richtofen as a quote-unquote old guy, which I just find hilarious, and he even says that Takio is his assistant so that he can do the work work he can't. For some reason, he also had this theory where Richtofen and Maxis were the same person, which does not make a lot of sense even for the time period this was posted. For instance, in the radio for De Reese that describes the events of the teleportation experiments on Samantha's dog, we can clearly hear the both of them speaking to one another, so with his logic, that essentially means he was just using two completely different voices to talk to himself, which is just funny to me. He was also convinced that Samantha was dead, which was very, very far from the truth for sure. But now that we are out of the storyline stuff, let's look into the fun theories some of these people had regarding the gameplay. One of the more infamous of these is of course the Nocturne Toten round 100 Hitler boss fight, which is just still to this day one of the most iconic hoaxes of all time. I did discuss this in my last video, so you can go see it there, but essentially this was a theory that stated that Hitler was going to be a zombies boss in round 100, which obviously never became true, but it's just so funny to me to this day. There was this other one I found that said on World at War De Reese there was a way to upgrade your grenades by throwing them into the fenced off generator here. Obviously this was not right, but for whatever reason there was actually a bigger explosion in this area that caused some people to believe this was actually a thing. There was another theory that stated that if you hit the box while the question marks were glowing, you were sure to get the ray gun, and this one was just not right obviously, but it was the minute details such as these that really got the attention of a lot of zombies players at the time. This guy here thought that interacting with this paper in this grate in the Der respawn would give you better box luck for some reason, but I can see kind of where he's coming from. I mean, the paper in itself looks like it holds some sort of power, and looking deeper it actually was a cipher, which at the time had of course not been solved. However, nowadays it has been solved and translates to, quote, Edward, it's time to kill Maxis, which is pretty fitting for the storyline and the intentions of Richtofen at the time of Der Reese. There were a lot of these theories on Der Reese, and in fact it looked like they were almost limitless, as even this guy said he was told that in the trench gun room there was a way to access a secret room with the FG42 wall buy in it. Now this makes absolutely no sense for a couple reasons. One, because of the fact that there is absolutely no way to open this, but two, there's already a FG42 wall buy on the map like right there. So I really have no idea who told him this, but yeah, they definitely need to work on their hoax work. And the final pretty fun one I found was that this guy thought by just getting to round 40, a pretty weird number I know, you would unlock the ability to just straight up leave Nocturne Toten. Obviously this was not true whatsoever, but I think this perfectly sums up almost everything we have discussed in this video today. World at War Zombies was an extremely strange time for the zombies community, but arguably one of the most creative and mysterious times, which is one of the better aspects of the mode during this time in my opinion. The infancy of the mode provided numerous opportunities for theories and discussions to be made as to how the story would progress, some even being extremely important, such as players mishearing a zombie say Sam. Overall, World at War Zombies was a fun side mode to many at the time. There was plenty to theorize about, and overall everyone was extremely happy with the mode at the time of its release, even though they certainly were not expecting it. Now, very similar to the World at War video I made, the majority of the content here will be found on old game FAQ sites, as of course Black Ops was set to release only a mere 2 years after the release of World at War, and really technically only a little over 1 year since the release of the last zombies map for the game, Der Reese. So obviously the technology and social community at the time had not yet entirely moved on to other more modern platforms, but as you will see later in the video, this was about the time where platforms such as YouTube really began to increase in popularity exponentially. But anyways, Call of Duty still remained to be one of the most popular games to exist on this website at the time, and as soon as the message board for Black Ops, actually called COD 7 at the time, opened up, there were almost a limitless amount of people actually asking if there would be zombies in the game. Obviously, the absence of zombies had been felt by a large audience of those playing Infinity Ward's Modern Warfare 2, and for the large following it had built up back in World at War with its unique maps and gameplay systems, people were practically begging for more. Such as this guy, who literally was asking for a new zombies mode all the way back in the September of 2009, which I just found to be a fantastic representation of the community's true interest in the mode at the time. This obviously was not the only person who posted this, and it even got to the point where I saw people suggesting that Treyarch make a game that strictly had zombies within it, such as this guy who actually recognized the true potential of the zombies mode at the time, which is something I find so truly poetic because of the fact we are still exhibiting this request nearly 15 years later. But I digress. us. Mixed in with all the comments expressing their excitement for the mode and questions on if it would be in the game was naturally theories, and at the time there was one major topic on everyone's mind: Vietnam zombies. Now, this theory, although crazy sounding now, made sense for a couple of reasons at the time. First of all, Black Ops at the time was already rumored to be a game that took place during the Vietnam and Cold War, which certainly was the backbone for the zombies mode that was built in World at War, but of course using World War II instead. And second, the last zombies mode in the game was titled Nazi Zombies, which at the time made sense due to the World War II setting World at War took place in, so it only made logical sense that this game would attempt to use the setting of the already established game to build its gameplay on. There was a lot, and honestly guys, I mean a lot of these comments, and the community was actually getting excited at this idea, and there were even people such as Buffalo who was specifically hoping for Vietnam zombies in the game. Although the popularity of this theory was certainly present, and there certainly was plenty of excitement to go around for the mode, naturally there were also plenty of people who, well, did not want the mode to come back. Such as this guy who sent out a post asking if anyone else hated zombies like he did, with some people somewhat agreeing and others providing feedback on what would make the game better, such as Sid, who stated that the game had too many glitches and a more refined experience would be awesome. There were even people suggesting new ideas for new adaptations of the gameplay, like this dude who suggested that instead of zombies being the third mode in this game, it should be ninjas. Wow. But keep in mind, zombies in of itself was a very new topic, even still after the release of World at War's adaptation of it, and the old argument of it still being unrealistic was certainly still present here. Overall though, I was just extremely surprised to see how much of a connection the community had truly made to the mode just 1 year after its release. And despite the negative criticisms, there was already seemingly a dedicated zombies fanbase awaiting its next release that had the potential to not even arrive. But after all this theorization, built up excitement, and new ideas, Zombies was surprisingly revealed by Mark Lamia in an interview on September 28th that described his plans for the zombies mode moving forward. It was admittedly a pretty random way to confirm zombies, but nonetheless the community was ecstatic upon hearing the news, and seemingly a lot of the negative comments towards the mode had paused, at least for now. And after a long, grueling 2 more months of waiting for the release of this mode, Black Ops would officially release to the public on November 9th. Unlike World at War previously, people already kinda knew what to expect with this zombies mode, meaning that the community immediately got to work sharing the best strategies to make it to the higher rounds on Kino der Toten and the other release map 5, which was actually the last map that would ever be locked behind the completion of a campaign. One thing I noticed about not just Kino der Toten, but 5 as well, was the honestly pretty basic questions people were asking that, well, would be answered by literally getting to round 5 of the respective maps. So this implied that, although many had the zombies experience in the past, the concept of the mode was still extremely fresh, and thus required simple questions such as how do I turn the power on, and can zombies be completed? It's not like these maps were anything vastly different from their predecessors or anything, and finding the power switch on Kino is not very difficult. But if you compare these questions to the questions of my past videos, it's pretty easy to see that, well, despite it being a year old at this point, zombies was still in its infancy, at least for now. This is also seen when we look at the vocabulary, because even still now, people are using words like weapons chest to describe the mystery box and levels to describe rounds. But anyways, as zombies does best, the theories ran rampant within this time period, and for Kino der Toten, they were almost immediate. One of the first things that was brought up was stated by this guy who mentioned the writing on the wall and asking exactly what Beware the Six actually meant. Now, to this day, we actually don't really even know what it means. There was a theory that it meant beware of round 6, as that is when the dogs can sometimes come, but the main theory, which was actually more popular in the replies, was that it refers to the Nova 6 crawlers on the map, which makes a whole lot more sense. But there was a very glaring aspect to Kino der Toten that many had taken notice to at the time: these red power boxes. And there were many theories sprung up about this, and Vince brings up the point that since the comics show you teleporting away, the power boxes could be used to reroute the characters out of the map instead of to pack-a-punch, even citing the lights on the boards by the mystery box as evidence. Clearly, this did not work, and there were even some people who replied to this telling him that the lights by the mystery box were for the mystery box, and ultimately these red power boxes actually had no story significance whatsoever. I found this pretty interesting theory that brought up the idea that the Thunder Gun, which was the wonder weapon of the map, was built by Maxis because he had been captured and forced by the Russians to build it. Yeah, I have no idea where he got this one. I mean, there technically was a quote by Richtofen that referred to the weapon as the DG3, which means he could see it as a successor to the Wunderwaffe DG2, which was created by Maxis, but like, why was he captured by the Russians anyways? But let's look at the other release map 5 and the theories and discussions over there. there. One of the funniest ones I immediately noticed about this map were the almost limitless names I saw the community create for the Pentagon Thief on this map. I saw names ranging from the Crazy Lab Guy to the Phantom Thief. I mean, like, some of these were so fun. There were some legitimate questions about this map though, and one of the most popular was regarding this pig in the basement of the map that is still fighting to stay alive when you first meet it. There were some people referring to the pig as a quote-unquote demon pig, which I just found to be so weird because some people really thought that by killing it, more zombies would come as a result. But the funny thing is the most prominent reactions to this map at the time was people practically jumping for joy over the fact that JFK was in a zombies mode. But that leads us into the first DLC, Ascension, and with this map the community was in for one of the most innovative zombies experiences in the entire history of the mode. Now Ascension definitely had one of the most hype behind it. Combined with the prior success of World at War and the overwhelming success of the launch of Black Ops 1 Zombies, it's safe to say people were excited. And well, this was catalyzed with the simple announcement of the fact that Ascension would be featuring space monkeys. Yeah, honestly, I think if the space monkeys were the only new feature, the community would have already gone bananas, but this isn't even talking about the introduction of 2 new perks and a main quest. But anyways, once again, I saw a theory before the map had even released that apparently a black man would be replacing Richtofen in the map, which was backed by the appearance of this man in the poster for the map. Now, first of all, this dude is clearly not of any racial color, and second, what in the world? This actually made me laugh out loud the first time I saw it, and the worst part about this is that the people in the thread were going along with it. Genuinely some of the weirdest stuff I have ever seen in my life. But just for clarification, that man is indeed not Richtofen, but rather it is Anton Gersh, a scientist who actually worked on this facility as a part of the Ascension group to successfully develop both the Thunder Gun and Gersh device. Anyways, the map came out and there were certainly some interesting theories I saw surrounding it. There was this one by Dark that was curious as to where it fit into the story, and well, I guess it wasn't a bad question at the time. Admittedly though, there were a couple of things wrong with his thinking. Firstly, he says that there was nothing that added to the story, but there was literally an entire Easter egg on this map that delved into the story, so I guess he didn't catch that part. And additionally, I found it pretty ironic how he could not see how it tied into the storyline of 5, because these maps quite literally take place at the exact same time, which can be heard by answering the red telephones around the map. So yeah, I don't really know how he didn't catch that. I also wanted to point out that there were numerous posts such as this one that stated they got to round 24 on the map and they were taking questions as if they were some sort of insane idol at the time. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a pretty big deal at the time and he has all the right to do that, but it's just so weird looking at this and then seeing Duke Dennis get to round 50 in the first ever gameplay of Black Ops 6 Zombies. There was another comment I saw about this map that was actually very mature and was a stark contrast to the hype surrounding the mode, which was a comment by Kinge that asked if the inclusion of Easter eggs would ruin the map because of the fact that everyone would want to do them. And while it may seem dumb to ask on the surface, I honestly think it's a very valid point, and honestly is partially part of the reason why simple survival maps exist nowadays and why Black Ops 4 was hated on launch. One more thing I wanted to mention was the reaction to the new perks, and well, surprisingly, while a lot of people were huge fans of PhD Flopper, many people were kinda indifferent to Stamina, which hurts me a bit because it's my favorite perk, but I can understand. Anyways, the next map, Call of the Dead, is unique as it was the first map on Black Ops 1 to ever release a proper trailer to the map before the map actually released on any platform. And some of the YouTube comments at the time would show their excitement for the new map. This honestly mainly stemmed from the fact that a celebrity cast would be featured within it, with many such as this guy pointing them out and this guy pointing out the fact that George Romero would be a zombie, which is just still a cool concept to this day. In the midst of the community's reaction to the map, however, there was once again theories, and well, oh god. There was this comment that said there would be a vampire zombie because of this. And I have no words. This literally is the actor who is playing in the movie before the actual zombies come in, so I just found this post pretty funny. But the map would of course release, and I think I found the best comment in this video yet. This guy was saying he was struggling to get past round 1 on the map because he couldn't kill George, and he ended up rage quitting because of it. This is just so funny. If you guys didn't know, George has 250,000 health for every person in the game, and it takes about a good 3 to 4 death machines to get rid of him in solo, so you could imagine what his starting pistol actually did to George. Spoiler alert, it's about the equivalent of throwing tomatoes at the Origins robots. Something I did notice pretty quickly though was people immediately noticed this map was much harder than what they had been experiencing prior. Obviously 5 was pretty difficult and many acknowledged that, but combined with the fact Ascension had just released and the fact that the map mechanics of Call of the Dead were much harder, it made it seem exponentially more difficult at the time. Anyways, I saw some theories that said that the whole map was just a movie. Obviously with the idea of celebrities shooting a movie, it would make sense, and to many it could describe the story up to this point, similar to how we used to think the Origins ending described the story as just a game built by children. I also saw a theory on the Call of Duty Zombies forum website that stated that George Romero set the crew up for failure and wanted them to die by sending them there, which I wouldn't say is exactly true. Obviously from the outro to the map, we hear that George did do research to find where he wanted to shoot the film, being on an old Group 935 base and all, but I don't think he was intending to kill anybody whatsoever, considering he got turned into a zombie himself, or whatever he is. But anyways, after the pretty stale period of theorization and a lack of excitement from the community because of Call of the Dead, Shangri-La would be next up. Before the map release, the community honestly seemed to be pretty excited. Once again, they were easily brought in with the idea of monkeys returning and the new zombie types in the napalm zombie, and admittedly they were super interesting features on the surface level. But when the map released, people began to quickly realize through first impressions that this map was very tight and difficult, but something I did notice was that people actually didn't seem to be too frustrated with it, rather calling it underwhelming. Anyways, of course, as always, the theories were rampant, and for Shangri-La, there was a pretty big one that kind of outshined every other theory that I'm sure you're familiar with. The idea that Shangri-La was on Mars was the most prominent theory at this time, and practically took up the majority of the theorization around the community, including prominent YouTubers who had began their rise such as Mr. Dalek JD and a multitude of forum posters who firmly believed it took place on Mars. To this day actually, we are not entirely sure as to where Shangri-La takes place, but as far as I know, the main map takes place in the Himalayas, and we are actually transported to Mars when entering Eclipse mode. There were other theories of course, but they mainly got drowned out by the idea of the map being on Mars, but I did find this one though that suggested that the zombies were tourists who were involved in a plane crash, which was nice, I guess. But anyways, with all that being said, we are now at the grand finale of Moon, and well, the community was going absolutely insane. One of the most prominent theories I saw about this map was that this would be the finale to Zombies as a whole. It would end everything and put a lid onto the story that had been developing for a good amount of time now. And a lot of people were in the belief that even if it wasn't the last Zombies map, at least the original Ultimus crew would be lost. And well, I suppose they weren't entirely wrong, considering you wouldn't be able to play as them until 8 years later in Black Ops 4, not counting Chronicles. This does not mean by any degree that people wanted the mode to end, however, and frankly many people were in hopes that it would not be lost forever after this iteration the mode had seen. But of course, per usual, there was the average crackhead theory such as this guy who proposed that the boss zombie of the map would be a transformer. Got it. The map itself would finally release though, and let me just say, unlike Shangri-La, there were people that either loved the map or absolutely despised it. There was no middle ground and no quote-unquote underwhelming experience to be had. It was either good or bad. Like, it was crazy to me. You either had people saying it was the best map ever, or you had people saying it was the worst thing they ever played. And honestly, if you look at the sentiment of the map today, that's kind of where it still lies. Now, the ending for the map certainly acted as a surprise to almost everybody. I mean, look at this guy. He was literally flabbergasted at the idea of it even happening. And while people were flabbergasted at that, there was this dude who was confused as to how they were drinking the perks through their helmet. But wait, I've actually never thought about that. The video is almost over, but I did want to include this one last theory by this commenter on my channel named OptiJams, who said that he thought his Black Ops game was haunted because of the cosmonaut having the same name as his friend. This was just so funny to me, and I think it's a good way to end the video. It shows the mystery the mode still held while also remaining extremely fun to the majority of players, and it's safe to say Black Ops 1 Zombies was a success. Black Ops 2 was once again another Call of Duty title that many fans were growing exponentially excited for. However, this time it was not because of the positivity surrounding the game in general like with Black Ops 1, but more the fact that fans were excited to experience another Treyarch game after the relatively lackluster and unimpressive reception to the release of Modern Warfare 3. And something that Treyarch games had that Modern Warfare games still did not at this point was of course the beloved Zombies mode, which was once again almost immediately requested by those on discussion boards way before the game game had even had much marketing. There was certainly plenty of excitement around the community for the thought of the zombies mode returning. Obviously, it had returned in the previous Black Ops game, so it only made sense for it to return within Black Ops 2 as well. However, something that I saw that is noticeably unique compared to the other releases I've discussed is the fact that it seemed like for the first time ever, some people were actually experiencing a zombies fatigue. Now, don't get me wrong, this was very early, even before zombies was announced, but I came across a lot of posts saying that zombies was an overrated game mode and got boring quickly. Of course, this had been present within comments surrounding the two previous releases, however, it was seemingly in a larger volume here than ever, with people such as Durable saying that he hated zombies and just found the concept of the entire mode to be boring. Although these negative comments were certainly pervasive in the discussion boards I looked at, there were plenty, and I mean plenty, of positive comments surrounding the idea of zombies in the game, and just like last video, there was even people such as this guy who was suggesting that they make a zombies only game instead of bundling it with the whole Call of Duty experience as a whole. But anyways, thoughts aside, there were lots of theories as to where the story and gameplay would go for this specific mode, because obviously the community was left with the Earth literally being blown up at the end of the moon Easter egg, so numerous theories rose up pretty quickly. Easily the biggest theory I saw was the thought that the zombies in this mode would lead more towards being extremely futuristic. For example, there was this comment by this guy that suggested that the zombies would be replaced by robots, implying you would fight an endless wave of essentially just machines. Someone even took this the extra mile by saying they wanted to fight Terminator zombies, with Arnold being the boss zombie, which was just a great theory. Jokes aside though, people genuinely thought this, and the idea of future zombies was almost limitless. Jetpacks, mech suits, laser guns, you name it, everyone was almost convinced that this game would be set in the far future of some kind, which was actually strange to me because of the fact that the next game, we'll cross that road when we get there. People were really keen on this idea of not having zombies though, and I even saw a comment that suggested that dinosaurs should be in the game instead of zombies. Like, what am I even saying? Anyways, there actually was not a lot of time for theorization this time around because zombies was not kidding around and surprisingly was revealed extremely early compared to the past releases, almost half a year before the actual game would even release. The first promotional image for zombies would release somewhere around May 3rd, 2012. I saw this post by this guy saying he couldn't wait to see what they were doing, but then I found a video posted by NGT Zombies that was breaking down the supposed image, and it turned out to be this. Although this image was pretty basic, it did act as the first piece of definitive evidence that zombies would be in this mode, and based off of the comments under NGT's video, it's safe to say the community was excited. I did see this theory though that I just had to bring up that said that she was holding Richtofen's head, which was interesting, I guess. And I also saw a comment literally calling out the myth that Misty was Dempsey's daughter, which was just crazy for me to see because it's insane to think that it was thought of that long ago. However, there would be a pretty significant amount of radio silence from Treyarch for the next couple of months, and then suddenly 3 months later we got practically an entire month's worth of zombies teasers that covered multiple aspects of the game and revealed some things we didn't know previously. For instance, there was this image that was captioned "There goes the neighborhood" that showed a picture of the Nuketown sign with zombies under it, which absolutely sent the community into a craze at the time upon hearing it. There were a pretty decent amount of these, and as much as I would love to go into each and every one of these Twitter and YouTube posts, they really do not provide anything too special aside from building up hype for the community per usual from the developers. But one thing I did want to point out was these YouTube videos that showed off sound of the map and a staticky TV, which honestly is just great marketing and genuinely does feel like zombies. Anyways, a trailer would finally release at the end of all this marketing on September 26th, and with it came a mild reaction? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. People generally seem to be kind of disappointed with the trailer slightly, not necessarily because of an uninterest, but because they wanted to know more about the mode than what they were initially shown, which actually is pretty reflective of the community's consensus on Black Ops 7 Zombies at the moment. I was a little surprised because I honestly liked the transit trailer for what it was, and while there were positive comments, there certainly was a lot of negatives across the board, which was the first sign that this mode may not be what people expect. But after a long month and a little more waiting, the community finally got their hands on the mode they had been teased for half a year on the 13th of November. Like Black Ops 1 previously, the community immediately got to work providing others with guides on how to get Juggernog, open Pack-a-Punch, and even turn on the power on transit, but there was something significantly different this time around. Past all of the guides and strategies people were coming up with was, well, the community sentiment of extreme negativity. Almost immediately after the game launched, I saw endless posts post about how they thought that the map was awful, citing numerous sources including the annoying fog, the never-ending lava, and the denizens as the main source of problem within this map. The fire and lava seem to be the biggest issue for people, which can be shown in this comment by Titus, who said that the fire was just pure frustration added by the developers, with a lot of the commenters agreeing with his statement, and truthfully, who couldn't? The fire was and still remains to be one of the worst parts of Transit, as it cannot be avoided due to the zombies themselves catching on fire, and his reasoning is completely justified. I mean guys, there was a lot of this disappointment around the community. Almost everybody was just upset with the idea that every single map that had released had the lava and fire in it, and it was not necessarily looking good for launch. So far in this series, we have not seen a negative review to the launch of a zombies mode, but this certainly was the first. Another reaction was shown by Deception, who kind of just sums up everyone's problems with Transit as a whole, saying he hated the fact that half the perks weren't there and the fact that the jet gun sucked. Some people were even in the firm belief that the whole idea of the mode was a joke, saying that the fact that the launch was only a couple small maps and a whole Transit mode was ridiculous, and it's clear that the older Zombies fanbase that had been built up over the years felt like they were not being catered to whatsoever. This was supported with this comment by this guy, saying that he wishes they would go back to the older Zombies formula, which was supported heavily in other comments in the thread. But despite all the negatives, there were some, if not very little, positives, such as Chaotix, who said that he loved Transit and the new concept of it all, and this guy saying he loved the map with 4 friends because of the large map design. Overall though, it was very clear that the veteran players were not necessarily the biggest fans of Transit, and if they just so happened to be a fan, it was because they were willing to adapt to the newer Zombies formula that had been presented by the developers. There were multiple theories surrounding the map though, despite its unpopular status, and the most common one was about the nav cards people found on the map, with this guy saying he thought it could be used to go to the HARP research station mentioned by Ted. Now, we know this is not right, but with the amount of cut content Transit has, it is very possible. The real use for these nav cards, however, would not be fully released until the release of the last Victus map, so as of then it was useless, but it does beg the question as to why they put it there in the first place. However, a saving grace of the mode was seen with the bonus release map, Nuketown Zombies, and it seemed to be for one simple reason: there was no lava. Yeah, surprisingly, I saw a lot more positive reception to Nuketown Zombies at launch. There were numerous people actually praising the map, and people such as this guy who were saying that Nuketown Zombies was awesome, and the main reason as to why was simply because there was no lava. People really had a huge vendetta against the idea of lava being in the game, and seemingly really did not like the new Transit experience, so this map seemed to tide the general community over, despite the fact it lacked content that Transit had so heavily introduced. Since this map had a lack of content, however, not a whole lot of theories were sparked up, and people quickly found out that it was occurring at the same time as Moon due to the eye color change of the zombies at round 25. But finally, that leads us into DLC 1 of this game, Die Rise, and so far it has been a pretty painful and lackluster launch on Treyarch's end, but unfortunately it is only about to get worse. Or so we thought. One theory I immediately saw with the announcement of this map was that this guy thought that the Victus crew would be transported to their maps in a helicopter that was piloted by Ted. I mean, I suppose it's a nice theory for the time, but for those who don't know, the Victus crew get taken to their locations by Richtofen himself, not Ted in a helicopter. There were also theories that honestly looked really cool but got the concept of Die Rise completely wrong, such as this huge theory that proposed Die Rise would be a Transit-esque experience that would have locations such as city, power plant, and other locations. Although it does sound cool, it definitely is not what we got in Die Rise. Anyways, the map would come out and people found out pretty quickly that, well, it was not another Transit experience, and this is honestly what people wanted. And a huge surprise to me was that, contrary to popular belief, Die Rise was not actually hated at launch by a large amount of the people playing the game. In fact, I saw loads of comments saying that they liked the map and that it was way better than Transit was, such as this guy who described it as a quote-unquote real zombies experience, and honestly, I think this was seen like this mainly because of the fact that Transit existed and not a whole lot of people liked the lava, clearly. The only real negative comments I really saw about Die Rise at the release of the map was honestly that of confusion more than anything, as the map obviously was built to be like a maze in a lot of ways, and there were a lot of people also not enjoying the fact that it was harder, such as this guy's friend. And a lot of people were definitely getting mad over the fact that they kept falling through elevator shafts attempting to move around. But with that, let's move on to the saving grace of Black Ops 2, Mob of the Dead. And well, it's safe to say that this was a stark contrast to the ideologies we have seen so far. Now, Mob of the Dead was actually in a very unique situation before launch, because there was actually a whole Reddit thread that was posted prior to its release by an apparent upset former Treyarch developer that detailed almost everything the map had to offer. This was absolutely insane. I will link the Reddit post in the description because it is absolutely massive, but it has been debated as to if this is legit, because he does get a lot of things right, such as the afterlife system, but also mentions other things that did not appear, such as mob rounds. But anyways, the community's reaction to this was overwhelmingly positive. I saw lots of comments saying this looked like a great map, but honestly the majority of the comments here were just questioning his legitimacy, so I'm just gonna move on from it. This did not stop theorization though, and I saw a lot of people on the Game FAQ discussion board saying that they thought famous gangster characters such as Joe Pesci were going to play characters in this map, kinda similar to how Call of the Dead did with a celebrity cast in its map. It would make sense, and they weren't actually too far from the truth because of the fact that the voice actors were famous actors such as Chaz Palminteri and Ray Liotta, both of whom had played roles in famous gangster movies such as Goodfellas and A Bronx Tale. Anyways, the map released and immediately people realized that Treyarch, particularly new head developer Jason Blundell, was not messing around with this new zombies experience. This was immediately pointed out by this guy who noticed this effort even though he only played it once and made it to round 5 on the map, which should say a lot about how people viewed it. A lot of people also enjoyed the fact that the story was integrated within the map's mechanics, which is interesting as previously this was something that was discredited within early zombies because people just wanted the simple gameplay experience. I saw a cool theory about how this guy thought that the Weasel's comic books were connected to the comic book loading screens we saw in Black Ops 1, which then led him to speculating that George would come back from the previous game, and while it obviously did not happen, it's an interesting thought and honestly is not a bad theory whatsoever. I saw this pretty interesting theory though that was asking what the perk machines were doing in the map, and once again it's a pretty valid question. As you probably know, the perk machines in this map kind of glitch in and out of existence, and this guy brings up the theory that the perk machines are brought there from the future in Doris. And well, I suppose he's not too far from the truth. Mob of the Dead takes place in an alternate dimension to reality, and the perks were simply placed here and are not real, so realistically he is not actually that far from the truth whatsoever. But with that being said, let's move on to the final Victus map of the game, Buried. Now, for some reason, the first thing I saw when looking into some of the comments at the time was this one that said that it reminded them of Shangri-La, and I mean, I honestly cannot see the resemblance at all. I mean, I suppose I could right by the mystery box maybe, but besides that, the maps have no similarities whatsoever in terms of appearance, so I'm not sure what this dude is talking about. But I did see this comment that said they had high hopes for Buried. They believed the 2 previous maps had been great and were excited to see more, and it was safe to say that Buried was not necessarily having the pressure to perform well like Die Rise or Mob of the Dead previously. But the map released, and honestly the first comments I saw about the map were half complaints, and I say half complaints because realistically they were just saying it was too easy. Like this guy who said on his first game he got to round 31 with 3 random people while they had little to no downs, which is definitely a sign that the map was too easy, but I don't believe he necessarily thought it was bad. In fact, I saw an overwhelmingly positive reception to this map at its launch. There were quite literally comments saying that even though it was easy, it still was an amazing map, such as this guy who loved all of the new additions the map had brought to the table. There were people who did consider a lot of the aspects of the map to be bad, however, such as this guy who said that Buried was ruined because of the amount of traps on the map that would allow you to get to the high rounds easier. Something funny that I noticed about Buried though was about Arthur, which if you don't know is the big dude on the map that a lot of people call Leroy. But just like the Pentagon Thief last video, I saw almost endless names for this guy that people were coming up with, ranging from Redneck to Huckleberry, which is just so funny to me. Oh, and fun fact if you didn't know, the reason the nickname Leroy even exists was because of a YouTuber named Syndicate who called him that, and it just kind of spread like wildfire.
The big fella, which is actually called Leroy, by the way. His name's Leroy, so.
With the final Victus map out of the way though, it's about time we make our way to the true finale of Black Ops 2 Zombies, Origins. Immediately when I looked at discussion boards about this map around this time, I saw a couple of theories, such as this one posted by Abyss that said that he thought Origins would be a mix of all the older Call of Duty Zombies maps. And well, if we look at the name itself, it does seem to be that way. Obviously, Origins quite literally means the beginning of something or the place where it started, so it would make sense. I also saw this other theory that apparently Maxis was going to be a boss zombie on the map in a suit of some kind, which honestly once again was not really that bad considering we do have Panzers in the map, but they certainly are not Maxis because, well, Yeah. And to nobody's surprise, when this map released, it was absolutely met with easily the most positive reception out of all the maps in the game.
This is so fun!
With people such as Tim even referring to the map as one of the best maps of all time because of the new features it brought to the table. This certainly was not the only guy who thought this. There were so many others who genuinely loved this map even after simple first impressions. Even after some time after this map was released, people were still referring to this map as on par with previous successors we had seen in Zombies, which while a little weak now, were certainly some of the best maps in the series back then. However, I did notice one very glaring issue many people had a problem with, and that was the ending cutscene to the map. The idea that the entire story was ran by children playing with toys seemed to be uninspiring and honestly pretty upsetting to the majority of the community, such as this guy who was comparing it to Toy Story, which I found pretty funny, but this was a serious issue amongst a lot of people at the time. I even saw posts such as this one by Jabroni that said it ruined the Zombies mode for him entirely because of the fact it just took place in the imagination of some kids. And for those who know now, this ending did not necessarily mean a whole lot. It certainly did not mean that the entire story was ran by children playing with toys, and the ending was meant to be more metaphorical if anything, but of course at the time the community did not know that. Before we begin talking about the anticipation to Advanced Warfare, which was the game the specific Zombies mode was released in, it is important that we understand where we are on the timeline. As we discussed last video, Black Ops 2 was the latest game at this point to release Zombies back in 2013. However, there was another Call of Duty game, Ghost, that had released right after Black Ops 2 had ended that featured an alien extinction mode. This mode was met with some relatively mixed reception across the board. Some people liked it, some people hated it, but the main thing people were looking forward to was zombies, and since Ghost had an alien shooter, people were questioning if there would be some form of zombies in Advanced Warfare as well. Nobody really was anticipating zombies within this game, however, and I honestly saw more theories stating other possibilities for the mode, ranging from bland modes such as Spec Ops to other more outlandish options such as vampires, dinosaurs, and even goblins. So it's safe to say nobody really expected there to be zombies in the first place. It's also important to mention that many thought that the next Call of Duty would be developed by Treyarch since it has been a 2-year cycle in the past. However, this game would mark the change from a 2-year release cycle for Treyarch to a 3-year release cycle, allowing Sledgehammer Games to step in and develop Advanced Warfare. Anyways, with background knowledge aside, Call of Duty at the time was in a very cramped release schedule, and the release of the multiplayer reveal for Advanced Warfare quite literally came out nearly a week after the final DLC for Call of Duty Ghosts, which was absolutely insane. But this is relevant to Zombies because I noticed a video posted on August 12, 2014 by well-known YouTuber NoahJ456 that provided a theory for zombies potentially being in the game based off of a console special edition for the game. Yeah, it's pretty crazy and I thought it was absolutely insane, but it was clear people had been wanting zombies after a year's hiatus from the game, going as far as Noah did by pointing out literally the tiniest detail on the controller with what looks like a round counter. It's safe to say the reaction to zombies potentially being in this game though was overwhelmingly positive. Numerous comments in Noah's comment section were absolutely excited about this potential release, and I also saw once again numerous comments saying it would be a dinosaur game mode or a cyborg game mode instead of zombies. Additionally, there was actually a video posted by the official Call of Duty account before all of this that saw musician Afrojack touring the Sledgehammer Games office, and at a specific point in the video there was a screen that was blurred out that definitely looked like zombies, which again got people extremely excited. People definitely wanted to play zombies in this game, especially since this was the first Call of Duty game to release on the new console, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and it was only a matter of time until it got revealed. However, in a press release revealed in late October or early November, right before the game released, Zombies was indeed confirmed to be in the game, but there was a huge catch. Zombies was locked behind a paid DLC for the game, essentially meaning that in order to play the mode in the first place, you had to buy the DLC for the game. This had not been a problem in the past modes, of course. Obviously, we had been paying for DLC previously, but this was a problem now because of the fact there was no launch map to play whatsoever. This was taken extremely negatively by the community, obviously, and people immediately noticed the pretty horrible business practices happening here, with some people such as Crizola calling it a straight up scam. I mean, they were completely justified to say all this though. I'm still mad about it to this day because I literally had to pay $50 to play Exo Zombies in the game through the season pass, which is honestly just a travesty. But anyways, this also meant that Zombies was not going to be be released until at least 2 months after the game had released, so all the Zombies community could do realistically was, well, wait. That was until about 2 weeks after the release of the game, where they would honestly drop one of the coolest cinematic trailers for a Zombies mode ever on November 26th. This trailer got some pretty positive receptions throughout the comments. I saw a lot of people saying it looked fun and that they were willing to try it out, but honestly the announcement that it would be a DLC was enough to throw people off completely. There was also plenty of comments saying how they refused to buy the mode because it wasn't Treyarch, so there was also that too. It's safe to say people were not the most excited for this overall interpretation of the mode, but they were just excited to see zombies in the first place. There was one more trailer that was released prior to the first DLC that would show off the cast of characters within this map, and Exo Zombies decided to go the celebrity route and make quite literally every crew member an actor, with John Malkovich, Bill Paxton, Rose McGowan, and John Bernthal. This easily got the attention of a lot of people, and overall it seemed the community sentiment was heightened with positivity just slightly. But finally, after what seemed like forever, the Zombies mode released on January 27, 2015, and the reaction was, well, pretty positive all things considered. A lot of people were saying that it was a great addition to the game. I saw people such as Kem saying he liked it because of all the new additions it added to the game, and the map Outbreak was perfectly sized. It was honestly pretty weird for me to see, because contrary to popular belief, there were plenty of people who seemed to love the mode. I even saw people saying it was better than Black Ops 2 Zombies somehow, but the only reason people seemed to dislike the map whatsoever was because of the fact that it simply was not Treyarch Zombies, which I suppose is understandable. But of course, per usual, there were plenty of people who were either just not impressed by the mode, which had been seen with YouTuber Mr. T Lexify at the time, or people who honestly just did not like the game because they didn't like the new systems it presented. Now, this may be recency bias, but I honestly kind of felt like there was a huge similarity between this experience in a lot of ways to the way Transit was viewed at launch. Although this launch was not nearly as negative as what we saw with Transit, I certainly saw a lot of people that refused to play it because it introduced so many new systems to the game. I think the overall consensus though was that this mode was a fun experience, however it was not nearly as good as the experiences the community had received prior with Treyarch Zombies, so people were not too impressed, but that doesn't mean people were not happy with the mode overall. Unfortunately though, the popularity of this mode was nowhere near enough to spark enough conversation about interesting theories surrounding the mode like with previous iterations, unfortunately, and people seem to just have a mild reaction to the fact it was in the game. But that leads us into the first, or I guess you could say second DLC, where we would get the next Zombies map, Infection, and oh boy. Infection released almost 2 months after the release of the first map of the game, Outbreak, and within it was a brand new Zombies experience that took place at a fast food restaurant? Yeah, pretty interesting decision, and the community honestly was just not the biggest fan of this map at all, and the main reason behind it honestly was just boredom, which is kind of insane to see because of the fact that this was literally the second map in the game. I saw comments such as this one by No Fear that backed this up, who said that he found it interesting at first but quickly got bored of it after the second day. This did not help the fact that apparently the Easter egg for the map, which mind you has become a staple to the franchise at this point, was just simply not even working right when the map came out. According to numerous sources, there was a bug part of the map that didn't even allow you to progress, which was just insane. And if it wasn't clear enough, people like Mr. T Lexify were literally putting quote, "don't buy this DLC" as their title for the video on the first attempt, so I think that says more than enough as to how people personally viewed the map. Overall, people did not like the map, and I think the Smith Plays sums it up pretty well in his video about it.
I've played on the Golden Gate Bridge, I've seen 1,000-foot robots, I've blown up the god Earth. And Sledgehammer thought it would be a good idea to make the highlight of a map a fast food restaurant.
However, surprisingly, things would come to change pretty quickly come the release of the next map in the game, Carrier, and things actually got pretty interesting for some people. Immediately when I was looking at videos from the time about the map, I immediately spotted people who believed that this was a pretty good map, such as this guy who said that it was the best Exo Zombies map and that he loved all the new features within it. And something funny I noticed was that, contrary to his last release, the Mr. T Lexify video for the first impressions about this mode was literally titled, quote, "get this DLC," instead of what we saw with Infection. And in the video, Lex actually seemed to be enjoying himself somewhat. The comments were supporting this idea pretty clearly. I mean, this dude said it restored his faith in the whole mode, and this guy said the map was literally legendary. Even creators such as Nero Cinema, who isn't really known for his zombies opinions, was even in on the hype for this map, saying,
So the map itself, is a lot better than what I thought it was going to be.
Now, while it may seem positive then, do I personally think this map really deserved it? Not really. I think, at least from an outside perspective, that this map was viewed in a much more positive light than what it probably would have been under different circumstances, as the previous release of Infection lowered expectations significantly, allowing the map to thrive. It's kind of similar to how people genuinely liked Die Rise in my last video following the release of Transit, because people viewed Transit as a horrible experience. Are Die Rise and Carrier the best maps ever? Certainly not, but they did serve as a faith restoration for the mode, which is certainly what Exo Zombies needed at the time. But with that, let's move on to the final map of the game, Descent. Descent is the closest thing we probably will ever get to an Atlantis style of map, unfortunately, but the setting of the map is so cool because it does take place underwater in some facility. And for the majority of people, the aesthetic is what caught their eye in the first place, such as this guy who said that he loved the atmosphere. But it didn't stop there. In a review by YouTuber Greg FPS, he stated that he would rate Descent as the best map in the game by far, and that he was not getting bored of it whatsoever. There were plenty of opposing comments though. In the Mr. T Lexify video surrounding his impressions, he stated that it was really just an Outbreak 2.0, and there were other people who agreed with his sentiment in the comments. People did really like the Easter egg with this map though. Contrary to Infection, where the Easter egg just didn't work, there were plenty of cool steps such as the Goliath underwater step and the infinite grenades and rockets Easter egg that many people found extremely exciting, and honestly the Easter egg isn't bad, and for those with elite ball knowledge about zombies, this technically was the first time a boss fight was ever added to zombies with the Oz boss fight. There honestly was a lot of content within this map, and overall, while there were numerous negative comments about the map, I saw a lot more positives across the board. Call of Duty Black Ops 3 was a game that may have had one of the most hype surrounding it in the entire history of the franchise up to this point, and similar to Black Ops 2, it was not quite necessarily because of the positivity surrounding the mode, but rather the opposite. The community perception of Advanced Warfare previously was, well, not very great, and although Exo Zombies at the time was not viewed to be a terribly negative mode, the multiplayer certainly was. So as a result, people were just excited to experience a Treyarch Call of Duty once again, and the hype for Black Ops 3 had been building up ever since the middle of the DLC cycle for Advanced Warfare. And the hype was certainly warranted. In interviews and other discussions describing the game months before the game actually released, developers were stating that Black Ops 3 would be the biggest experience they had to offer to date, and even saying the same exact wording with the Zombies mode. Because of this wording, however, there were many theories as to where the Zombies mode was going to go with this game, and the main one that I saw was that there would be a full Zombies campaign. For example, there was this video by Lonely Mailbox released in the late April of 2015 stating he believed that there would be a Zombies campaign, citing the fact that the Zombies was at a peak at the time, which it admittedly was, and that the experience had the opportunity to expand past others because of the new technology it was releasing on. Many people in the comments were absolutely in on this idea. Numerous people were stating how they wanted this to be in the game, but there were some people who believed that this would be a poor decision as they had not had a genuine Zombies experience since the release of Origins back in 2013 and wanted that classic Zombies feel back. Overall though, people liked this idea, and it was clear from the very beginning that this mode would be one of the biggest in the entire history of the franchise up to this point, and people were excited. Additionally, there were some pretty outlandish theories I saw from Lonely Mailbox as well, saying he believed there would be an Egypt Zombies map within Black Ops 3, and I mean the reasoning behind it wasn't all too bad, but the main thing I wanted to look at was the comments, because people were actually super excited for this idea, and although of course we know now this never actually happened, it was interesting to see the theory. I am actually a little bit surprised though that it took us until Black Ops 4 to get an Egypt map, and I find it pretty crazy, but anyways, this theorization and hype would continue for the next 2 months of Zombies content, where YouTubers were posting numerous videos about ideas and theories about the mode until early July, where it would be revealed that well-known YouTuber who we have grown very familiar with throughout the series, Syndicate, would be hosting the reveal panel at San Diego Comic-Con for Black Ops 3 Zombies alongside Jason Blundell and Craig Houston. And at this reveal panel, the community got practically everything they needed to know in the reveal of the launch map for the game Shadows of Evil, and well, it's safe to say people were pretty excited. Just the simple fact alone that this map tied into Mob of the Dead was enough to make people excited, and this honestly was one of the biggest talking points for theories around the community. For instance, in a comment under a video made by Espresso, this guy stated he thought that the new new characters seen in Shadows of Evil were going to meet the crew from Mob of the Dead, and this guy thought that the Easter egg of the map would involve launching fireworks, which can be seen from Mob of the Dead. But the trailer would be a major part of this event, and the reaction to it was pretty mixed. This honestly might take the cake for the most polarizing reactions to a reveal trailer in the history of this series so far. I saw a lot of people saying how it looked awesome and that they couldn't wait, but on the other side of the coin, I saw people who were skeptical or just completely disappointed or upset. The two perspectives were really interesting though. For the people that loved it, such as this guy, they loved it because of the new features that it presented, such as the new gobblegum and of course its connection to Mob of the Dead. However, I know I just said it was extremely polarizing, but holy, there were so many negative comments, it's unreal. And easily the most common complaint was the fact that aliens existed in the game, which threw people off completely. People such as this guy just absolutely hated the idea of aliens being in the zombies game mode, and admittedly I suppose it is understandable, and to be completely honest, this is where zombies really began to lose the OG players that it had built up from World at War. A lot of people also did not like the fact that this map would feature a new cast of characters. Some people such as this guy just wanted the old characters to return after their appearance in Origins. However, Treyarch would offer a saving grace to those who were not interested with Shadows of Evil whatsoever with The Giant. A trailer would release about a month before the game release for this map, and people overall were pretty positive about it, but from what I could gather, people were just slightly disappointed it was just a Der Riese remake, but they were just happy to have a classic zombies feel and the premise crew as well. But contrary to the popular opinion nowadays, before the release of Black Ops 3, things were looking pretty rocky, and the YouTubers surrounding the game at the time, while excited, were a little skeptical going into it. But finally, on November 6, 2015, Black Ops 3 would release, and the two maps people had been waiting for months were finally available. But let's start with the main course here, Shadows of Evil, and while the reaction to this map was honestly just like its trailer, extremely polarizing. I saw loads of comments under first attempt videos of popular YouTubers such as Mr. T Lexify, Syndicate, and NoahJ456 that said they were excited for the map because of its size and how different it felt to regular zombies. There were even plenty of posts on forums such as this one on CallOfDutyZombies.com that said they thought it was a really awesome map and had an amazing atmosphere to it, which was supported by other people in the comments below it. However, there were so many comments that I saw that said that they just wanted to go back to the classic zombies feel once again, and many people honestly seemed to feel like they were not being catered to because it was not a classic interpretation of what they once knew. This was shown by a comment made by Cliff, who said that he believed it was not the simple Call of Duty Zombies game he once fell in love with, and he was disappointed by its release in the game. I also saw lots of disappointment surrounding the Easter egg within this map, but not necessarily with the steps themselves, but rather with the lack of a reward upon completing it. And I mean, it is understandable. In previous releases, we had gotten entire perkaholics from Easter eggs, or even just small things like longer death machines, but with this map, quite literally the best things players got for completing the Easter egg was a measly 1000 XP, which is quite literally like nothing if you weren't aware.
Can we just talk about how we only get 1000 XP from that?
Overall though, while there were negatives for sure and a fan base was clearly not being marketed towards, I did see a pretty significant amount of positives around the board even after the map had been out for some time, so overall it was a relatively decent launch map. But we also need to talk about the Giant, which honestly was probably the savior for those who did not like newer zombies, as of course it was literally just Der Riese. And from what I could see, the reaction to this map was honestly overwhelmingly positive compared to the polarization seen with Shadows of Evil, and I mean it makes sense. Everybody loved Der Riese, and since this was just a simple bonus map, people didn't necessarily care as much as to if it was new or included anything special, which it most certainly did, but it was born to be successful. Loads of these comments, such as this one by Hassa, said that he loved it and found it much better than Shadows of Evil because it was so much simpler for everything the game had to offer. I saw another comment by Pinaz that said he much preferred the setup on Der Riese than the long complex process that had been accomplished for Shadows of Evil, and honestly, I can completely understand that. I will admit it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows though. There was this comment by Duck who said that he did not like what the Giant had to offer because he had gotten so used to it from Der Riese, so he preferred the new content that Shadows of Evil presented. I will say though, I know this is one small example, but I came across the poll from a forum that asked which launch map was better, and it was nearly straight down the middle, with the Giant barely beating out Shadows of Evil, which just goes to show the community was relatively happy with both of the maps at launch equally. It really just depended on what you valued with zombies. But with that leads us into DLC 1 of this game, Der Eisendrache, and if there were any doubts as to if this game was bad at this point, I think it was now that they were thrown away. Before that though, this map had some theories before it came out, and there was this one by Stop Mocking Me who said that he wanted to see Groff and Schuster back from Moon, which was scarily accurate, but then he said that there would be a helicopter or the Die Glocke, which was interesting. There also seemed to be a common theory that there would be a mechanical or robotic dragon that we would have to fight, which did make sense since Der Eisendrache translates to the Iron Dragon. But anyways, unlike Shadows of Evil that took time for people to fully see the true potential of this map, Der Eisendrache was absolutely loved by the community from the very start. There were so many people saying how much they loved the map and the new bows within it, and people just could not stop loving this map. I saw almost endless comments under YouTube videos, YouTubers themselves, and forum posts saying how good this map was, and for the first time in Zombies history, this finally was a map that everybody seemed to unanimously like. There was this post by this guy who said that Der Eisendrache was the most fun he has had with a Zombies map since Moon, which is insane to say, but clearly goes to show how much people really liked it. There were even people such as Donuts, who recently got his popularity, which by the way, shout out to him, he is such a cool guy, but he was out here back in the day making videos about it, saying,
"My first impression is that I absolutely adore this map. I love this map."
But overall, it is safe to say that Der Eisendrache might be quite literally the most successful Zombies map of all time. I spent a lot of time looking through forum posts and found literally no bad comments regarding this map whatsoever, and it seemed everyone enjoyed it, with some people getting emotional for the end cutscene. But that brings us into DLC 2 Zetsubo no Shima, and well, this is where it starts to get a little ugly for this game. Unlike Der Eisendrache, I saw a lot more negative comments being made about this map. Admittedly, compared to the Mona Lisa that was Der Eisendrache, it is really hard to create something immediately after that came up to par with the Zombies community, and unfortunately, Zetsubo no Shima just could not do it. I saw loads of comments that had problems with a bunch of the systems the map presented, but the main one I saw was that people just did not like the planning system within this map, such as this guy, which had been introduced here and was clearly something people just did not like. People also did not like how there was water in a Zombies map, which does make sense as the system was a little bit weird, especially in the caves in the bunker. I saw this comment by Lene that I think personally summarized the community's feelings surrounding the mode from all the comments I read, which said that Zetsubo no Shima was everything he hated put into one Zombies map, and it was just not fun enough to warrant putting time into it like he had with Origins previously, and had such a good time with it. He even mentioned the point I said earlier, where the high hopes built up by Shadows of Evil and Der Eisendrache had just completely been crushed by this map, and the community honestly fell into a pretty dark pit after this point. Even some of the most popular YouTubers such as The Smith Plays and Mr. T Lexify were just not a fan of this map at all when it came out, and Zombies content slowed down pretty significantly during this time because of it, and it was not looking very good for Black Ops 3 as this map seemed to kill all the hype it had been building up over the DLC cycle. However, I'm going to branch off really quick to provide some context for my next point, so just bear with me. In between the release of Zetsubo no Shima and the third DLC for Black Ops 3, a community event would occur that would see 5 popular YouTubers at the time join a content house together to make Zombies content, and that would be seen with the Z House. I have made quite literally endless videos about these guys because of how much I miss their content, so if you want to know more about them, then go check out those, but ultimately what you need to know is that this genuinely got the entire Zombies community hyped for the summer of 2016, which led perfectly into DLC 3 for this game, Gorod Krovi. And with this hype, all the map had to do was deliver, and my goodness did it absolutely deliver. Yes! Gorod Krovi was an answer to the cries of the older Zombies fanbase who had grown tired of all of the new systems presented to the game, and offered an experience for those who were yearning for that classic Zombies feel once again. The map was a perfect counter to the systems presented in Zetsubo no Shima. It was an extremely simple map with a simple power switch and easy access to the mystery box, which was reflected on in this comment made by Clue. There were even people such as these guys who said that it was the best Zombies map of all time, and I mean this was not just one person saying this, so it was a collective experience shared by many different people. I mean, even in Syndicate's title for his first playthrough of it, he put, quote, Gorod Krovi epic first live attempt, which should just go a long way to tell you how people viewed this map. Also, this is really random and doesn't relate to Gorod Krovi like at all, but I was looking at forum posts about the map and came across a theory that stated that the Weasel was actually Dr. Monty after he escaped from the Easter egg on Mob of the Dead. Yeah, we are currently 5 videos into this series, and there are certainly still crackhead theories. Overall, Gorod Krovi was a map that worked to revive the hype that had been lost with the release of Zetsubo no Shima and the long wait for the map, and it executed its job perfectly to remain as one of the best maps in Zombies history. But finally, that leads us into the grand finale, the big ending of Black Ops 3, and this one was interesting. Now, before this map had even released, there were numerous theories that this map would be a completely different map, and that the maps that we see in Revelations, such as Shangri-La, Origins, Mob of the Dead, etc., would be put into a Resurrection DLC 2.0 of sorts, which, if you don't remember, is the DLC in Black Ops 1 where we got all the World at War maps remade in that game. But when the map released, people obviously figured out that it was a love letter to the Zombies community in a sense, and included every single one of the maps but into one experience combined. Now, initially, with all of these returning assets, the positivity and excitement was literally through the roof. I saw so many people saying how they loved the map and how it was so cool seeing all the locations. I even saw this guy saying that Revelations was officially the best map ever because of the overload of all the new features it presented. However, after a couple of days, the hype started to decline significantly. I saw people such as this guy saying that he found the map fun initially, but definitely saw that it was going to get boring pretty quickly because of how truthfully easy it was. And I mean, who can't see that? We literally had the Thundergun, Apothecon Servant, Ragnaroks, and Arnie's in one map. Absolutely insane stuff from Treyarch, to be completely honest. I also saw this comment by Sailor who said that he felt that crucial parts of the zombie storyline was left out of the map, including the absence of a key representation of the Victus crew, which is the one big thing he really disliked about the map. But one of the main things that did not help, and that still manages to haunt the community today, is the fact that this Easter egg took a whole week to solve, which was driving people absolutely insane. And then even when the Easter egg was solved, the end cutscene for the map left much less to be desired, and for the second time in a row, Treyarch seemed to leave the community kind of upset with how it ended. People such as this guy thought it was just too confusing and anticlimactic, and honestly, for the time, it does make sense, and it is crazy to me that Treyarch could not perfect these end cutscenes for the final Zombies map. But with that was the end of the DLC cycle for Black Ops 3 Zombies. But wait, hold on, there was something else? For a good long while, Black Ops 3 was thought to be done and over with, and many in the community were still playing the game because of how good it was, or were transitioning to other Zombies releases we will talk about in a future video. However, for those who stayed, there was something that was being rumored to drop, a DLC 5 for Black Ops 3 that would strictly be zombies. Now, I couldn't really find where these rumors started, but it was spread like wildfire across the YouTube platform and within comment sections, and people were beginning to gear up for this possibility. But then, on the 4th of May 2017, 8 months after the final release map for Black Ops 3, Zombies Chronicles would be announced by Jason Blundell himself at YouTuber JC Backfire's apartment, and this sent the community into absolute chaos. People were insanely excited for this to come back. 8 fully fleshed out Zombies maps that would be remastered for a Zombies only DLC was absolutely unheard of at the time, and people were going wild. It was not just the comments though. YouTubers outside of JC were going insane at the simple reveal of this in the trailer for the DLC, and it was safe to say this DLC was a success before it even dropped.
This is so sick, dude!
But then it dropped, and there was just no room for negativity nearly anywhere. Everybody was excited to play, everybody loved it, and I'm not kidding you, not one singular negative comment was sprung in a comment section, thread, or forum post that I read. The price was additionally something that caught people off guard, in a good way of course, and honestly, who couldn't? It still remains to be one of the most valuable DLCs in Zombies history in terms of pure content to price ratio, ago, and it still stands as one of the best for that. The only real negative comments I saw were those expressing their dislike for glitches and bugs within the experience, which naturally had come as a result of adding gobblegums to the maps in this DLC that had previously not had any. I know I just said there were not a lot of negative comments, but honestly the fact that the OG weapons were not at least remade within the maps was upsetting to a lot of people, and the most prevalent of these issues was seen with the starting pistol. For those who don't know, for a little bit the MR6 was actually the starting pistol on all the maps except Origins, of course, which many were extremely upset about, and one that was eventually changed to the 1911 because of it. But it wasn't just the MR6, and a lot of people wanted the older weapons back as well, but besides that was really all the negativity I saw. Oh, and also a lot, and I mean a lot of people were also upset because of the fact that PhD Flopper was not present within this DLC and was replaced by Widow's Wine. And I will admit it was a little bit upsetting, but it honestly wasn't really the end of the world. It was a truly poetic ending to Black Ops 3, and it's safe to say the community ended on a very high note on a DLC that is still talked about to this day. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare as a whole was in a very interesting spot before it released, as not only would it be the third futuristic title in a row within the Call of Duty series, but it would also have to live up to probably the most intense hype we have ever seen with Black Ops 3 in all aspects of the game. So it is safe to say that this game was put in a very bad position right off the start, and while it was still extremely exciting for a new Call of Duty to come out, a lot of people were not the biggest fans of the idea in the first place, especially since it was not developed by Treyarch. For instance, I saw this comment on a forum by Proudly that said that he felt as if Call of Duty was becoming too stagnant and needed real innovation rather than what he believed to be a game that was unexciting and dull. It didn't help the fact that this game was bundled alongside a remaster of one of the most popular Call of Duty games of all time, Call of Duty 4, and I saw a lot of posts on forums saying that they were only getting the game to get the remaster of Call of Duty 4. The fact it was a futuristic Call of Duty threw people off completely in terms of the multiplayer community, such as this guy who said he would be playing the Call of Duty 4 remaster even though he bought Infinite Warfare. And keep in mind, all this negativity was brewing even before Zombies itself was even revealed to the public, so it's safe to say that Call of Duty itself was being put in a very bad situation, but arguably Zombies was getting it much worse. The reveal trailer for Infinite Warfare would launch though, and well, if you are familiar with Call of Duty history whatsoever, you would know that this was actually one of the most disliked videos on the YouTube platform of all time. Yeah, I'm not kidding, thousands upon thousands of videos release almost every day on the platform, and yet the trailer for Infinite Warfare managed to get one of the most amount of dislikes on a YouTube video ever. I was curious and actually checked, and as of right now it's about 660,000 likes compared to a whopping 3.9 million dislikes, so yeah, it's safe to say people were not a fan. But then Zombies would be announced, and well, it's safe to say that combined with the negativity previously, people were admittedly a little disappointed in some forum posts that I read. Yeah, it was really weird, but I saw this comment by X-Men that said he would rather have an Extinction mode return from the previous game or a Spec Ops rather than Zombies. Apparently, for some reason, he wasn't the only one who felt this, and I saw a good amount of people who said that they would rather have Extinction back or Spec Ops over Zombies. A lot of people just seemed to feel like Zombies was being slapped onto games it should not be in, and many were in the belief that the developers were looking at the success of Treyarch Zombies and were attempting to replicate it, which honestly is definitely what was happening, as before Zombies was announced, a sequel to Extinction was actually in the works, but we'll get there later. But surprisingly, when the trailer dropped for this game on August 16, 2016, there was a lot of people saying how they really liked the way it looked. Honestly, the positivity within the comment section was absolutely unreal. So many people were saying how this was unique and how they were willing to give it a try, and it was at this point that Infinite Warfare finally saw some positivity for the game, and it was for a Zombies mode that was not developed by Treyarch. The amount of times I saw the word creative and unique within the comment section was unbelievable, and even those who said that they were not the biggest fan of the way Zombies was heading after Black Ops 3 still admitted that they liked the atmosphere and were willing to give it a try. Big YouTubers such as Codename Pizza and Mr. T Lexify were seemingly extremely excited for the mode. However, there were others such as Mr. Raffle Waffles who said that while he was generally excited, he was worried with how it was separating itself from Treyarch Zombies. So it is safe to say that while people were generally disappointed with Infinite Warfare as a whole, they were gearing up to try a new Zombies experience. And before the game released, there actually was a developer stream hosted by head developer Lee Ross that saw the first ever gameplay of the map and its systems, and people were relatively happy with what they saw, and this guy even said he went from not even getting the game to an immediate pre-order, which is pretty insane to me, to be completely honest. But if I were to go into this game with one word in mind, I think the best way to describe the way people felt was that they saw the game as different and were excited because of it. But then on November 6, 2016, Infinite Warfare would release to the public and people could finally get their hands on the mode that had been building up hype since August. And just like the hype that had been building up for this map prior to its release, the reaction amongst the community seemed to be overwhelmingly positive. I saw comments such as this one by Indy, who said it was a nice change of pace from Black Ops 3, and I even saw this guy saying that he was expecting it to suck, but that it looked really good. I saw this comment under the Relaxing Ends first attempt on the map, saying how he liked the map because it was a mix of zombies and Extinction. Yeah, honestly not sure where he got that Extinction part from, because there's like almost no similarity, but we'll get to that again later in the video. But the people in the comments weren't the only ones saying this. YouTubers such as Liam Winter were saying statements like,
"Zombies in Spaceland is better than 4 of the 6 maps in that game."
Outside of comments and YouTube videos though, there were a multitude of forum posts saying how much they loved the map, and there was someone who even went as far as saying that Zombies in Spaceland was the best map ever and was worth the price of the game alone. While the positives were present in a lot of comment sections and forums, I will say there were some negative comments, such as this guy who said he did not like how the Afterlife arcade was handled, and honestly I can sort of agree. In solo, the arcade literally has no meaning at all. You just go down and go through the door instead of just being directly revived, so I didn't like it for that, but it was a nice change of pace in terms of co-op gameplay. I even noticed that YouTuber The Smith Plays agreed with this in his first attempt livestream of the map, saying,
"You down in solo, you get taken out of the game, so now you're not even thinking, it takes you out of the idea of playing zombies."
But guys, I'm going to be completely honest, the positivity surrounding this map was absolutely insane. I'm not all that surprised because of how well this map plays in almost every aspect and how much genuine content is featured within the map, and overall it was quite literally the best start to Infinite Warfare Zombies it could have possibly hoped for. But that leads us into DLC 1 of this game, Rave in the Redwoods, and this map is extremely important for the success of this game, as it has to follow up to and live up to the hype presented by Zombies in Spaceland. In the trailer released a week before the map released, I saw numerous comments expressing some pretty good overall positivity. I saw this one by YouTuber Avery that said he thought it was sick and the zipline and flogger got him more excited, and there were plenty of comments such as these that said it looked really good and they were excited to play. I should mention though that during this time, there were a lot of people who were following the common ideology of just hating on the game as a whole, because as we discussed, people just did not like the game for what it did on the MP side of things, and couldn't see that Zombies was branching out to a completely different genre. Even behind all that though, I literally saw only positive comments, and it seemed people were ready for this map to release. Even YouTubers like Mr. Raffle Waffles were excited for the map, in which he said he was excited for the map because it was a different tone than the overly goofy nature seen in Zombies in Spaceland, but honestly this map would arguably be a lot more goofy for a lot of reasons. But anyways, Rave in the Redwoods would come out though a week later, and the community reception was, well, not too bad actually. While the overwhelming positivity that we saw with Zombies in Spaceland was not exactly present, the positivity within the comment sections I saw was actually pretty good. I saw this guy saying that he was pretty impressed with the map, and I saw this dude who said he loved the map. There were plenty of these comments everywhere that I looked. Numerous comments were saying the map looked great and that they really liked it, and overall it wasn't looking too bad. Even in a review by YouTuber Greg FPS, he rated the map a solid 8.5 out of 10, which is a stellar rating, and he said that he really liked the map and the systems it presented. Now, although there were positives, it certainly was not as much as Spaceland, and there was some pretty substantial pushback from the community for this map. One of the main reasons people seemed to be upset was because this map had its Easter egg solved relatively quickly, as this map only only took 6 hours for the Easter egg to be solved, which some people took negativity towards. There was this pretty passionate comment that stated how much he hated Rave in the Redwoods, saying how hard it was to do anything on the map, especially with the Rave mode, and I even saw this one that said the map was worse than Transit. Now, honestly, I saw a lot of people pointing out how this was harder than Zombies in Spaceland, because it certainly was, but I only think people were really complaining because of how easy it was on Zombies in Spaceland prior, because honestly, Rave in the Redwoods is not a hard map like at all in my opinion, and this is coming from like one of the worst Zombies players ever. But overall, the map itself was still viewed pretty positively. I saw a lot more positives than negatives across the board, but I have noticed that the community pushback was starting to rise just slightly. But that leads us into the second DLC, Shaolin Shuffle, and this one was pretty interesting. Before we even talk about the trailer or anything whatsoever, I wanted to look at this Twitter poll by Mr. Waffle Waffles that was posted before the release of the map or even the trailer that was asking how excited people were for the map, in which a good 50% of people said that they just did not care. I think at this point, whether the map was good or not, it is safe to say that the community had seen a slight burnout of Zombies content in general. Keep in mind, this game came right off the heels of one of the most successful Zombies games of all time, Black Ops 3, and people had gotten a total of 8 maps within like a year, so it makes sense. But if we look at the trailer, which was released a week before the full map was released, it seemed like people were still excited. I saw comments such as this one that said everything looked awesome, and this guy who said that it looked great. There were some negative comments though, and admittedly a pretty decent amount of them. I saw multiple people saying how they were disappointed or were just done with Infinite Warfare Zombies as a whole because of the way this map looked, even asking if this was Zombies anymore. For the trailer though, I would say that the reaction was pretty mixed, but overall it was not entirely negative, but that isn't to say it was entirely positive either. But the map would release, and well, I was pretty surprised to see that I saw a lot of positive comments. Lots of people were saying how this map exceeded their expectations, that they liked it, or just how they liked the music within it, and the positivity was honestly something I was extremely surprised to see. I mean, I was even seeing comments like this one that was saying that it was the best map in the entire game, and honestly, I found this pretty crazy because of the fact I had this belief that this map was hated at launch, but I just didn't see a whole lot of negatives. I will say though, there were YouTubers like Mr. T Lexify and JC Backfire at the time who really only played the map once on their channels, and throughout the video they kind of were just making fun of how they didn't really want to play the game, and it's safe to say that other games like Overwatch and Black Ops 3 were occupying their time more than Infinite Warfare Zombies was. There were also people such as P who was having troubles with the main Easter egg for the map because of how glitchy it was, and I will say the Easter egg was much harder, so for this to be piled on top of glitches is insane. And of course, per usual, there were just people saying that it wasn't Black Ops 3, so they weren't even gonna try it. But overall, I was extremely surprised to see that this map was received so well by the community. People really seemed to like this map and its aesthetic, and for the people that didn't, it seemed the only real reason was because it was not Black Ops 3 Zombies. With the overall success of Shaolin Shuffle over, however, we move on to Attack of the Radioactive Thing, and before we even talk about this map, we need to talk about something else first. In between the release of this map and Shaolin Shuffle, an unexpected DLC 5 for Black Ops 3 Zombies would drop with the well-known Zombies Chronicles, and well, it's safe to say that people seemingly almost immediately abandoned this game entirely to go play that DLC instead because of how truly popular it was. I covered this topic in my last video, so you can go check it out there, but Attack of the Radioactive Thing was doomed from the start, and it did not seem to get much better with the release of the trailer. Unlike every other map previously, Attack of the Radioactive Thing did not even have a full trailer for the map, instead being grouped with the rest of the DLC pack trailer, so it was a little difficult to find reactions to this trailer. However, there were a couple. I saw a couple people saying how they did not like the name of the map, which is actually a first. I've never really even seen someone complain about the name of a map before, but it's pretty weird. Overall though, it was at this point that I noticed that people stopped hating on Infinite Warfare like they had been for literally half of the game, and people seem to finally be maturing slightly in terms of how they handled their reactions to this game. But the map would release, and honestly, people were not really the biggest fan. I saw this comment under a Reddit thread asking how people felt about it, and he said that he did not like the colors and the fact that the zombie spawns were extremely slow. Additionally, I saw this one that said it was a 6.5 out of 10 map and that there was not much replayability to the map on top of the colors being extremely poor. of like what was mentioned with the last comment. I think the biggest problem people had with this specific map, however, was the Easter egg. There were so many people saying how they did not like the Easter egg because of its complexity, and I mean, who can blame them? There are genuinely insane steps within this Easter egg that seem almost impossible without a cheat sheet. There were some people who viewed it as a positive experience though. Under numerous first attempt videos, there were some people such as this guy saying that he had fun with the map, and there was also this guy who loved the new perks and boss fight it brought to the game. But overall, if I were to give a general sentiment to this map, it was quite negative, and combined with the fact it was released right after Zombies Chronicles and that it was not the best experience, this map was not looked back on fondly by a good majority of people. However, that takes us into the final release map of this game, The Beast from Beyond. This map was extremely unique, and when the trailer dropped on September 5th, 2017, people quickly found out why. Aliens from Extinction were making their return to this map alongside the zombies we saw in the 4 previous maps, and honestly the sentiment in the comments was extremely positive. Lots of people who had been hoping for Extinction instead of zombies were rejoicing, and everyone seemed to be relatively excited. And I mean, overall the trailer itself was received relatively well, to be completely honest. Loads of people were excited for this map even though the trailer itself was only 44 seconds long, and going into it people seemed to be in a good mood. However, when the map actually released, this sentiment quickly changed. I saw loads of comments saying that this map was way too difficult. In the first attempt video made by the Smith Plays, he literally titled it, quote, "This might be the hardest zombies map of all time." But it was not just him. A lot of people found this map extremely difficult to play, especially because of the fact that the aliens on this map were cracked out of their minds. There was this dude under a Reddit thread I saw that said that the map was too difficult, and even if he had practiced to be better at it, he just felt he would rather play other maps. Outside of the difficulty complaint though, it seemed people just did not like this map very much. I saw this comment that said it was his least favorite map in the game and that he felt it was less creative than the other maps that had been shown previously. But I think this comment I found under a NoahJ456 stream about the first playthrough of the map really goes to show how this game had evolved throughout the DLC, stating that everyone was hyping up the map and yet just did not post about it. People just really did not seem to care anymore, and unfortunately the truth was that if people were playing zombies, it was most likely on Black Ops 3 and Zombies Chronicles rather than Infinite Warfare Zombies. But there is one thing I wanted to mention before this video ends, and that is the reaction to the Mephistopheles boss fight. And honestly, even though the reaction to Beast from Beyond was not positive, this got a lot of positivity because of the dedication you had to complete this boss fight, because truthfully, this is literally the hardest zombies boss fight of all time. Call of Duty World War II, unlike Infinite Warfare in a lot of ways, was supposed to be the fabled return of the Call of Duty franchise to its roots, as for the first time since World at War in 2008, Call of Duty would be revisiting the World War II period, making it a stark contrast from the futuristic titles fans had been getting consecutively for the past 3 games. So it's safe to say that since this was not going to be a futuristic title, the community surrounding Call of Duty was extremely excited. One thing I immediately saw when looking at forums for this particular game was this poll created by Jim, who was asking if people were excited for boots on the ground gameplay, and yeah, the people in favor of boots on the ground won by a landslide. Trust me, this was not the only post I saw about this. Numerous people acknowledged this within comment sections and Reddit posts that I saw, such as this one by Fila that said this is what the people wanted. I even saw comments under the reveal trailer for the game that said this was a fantastic return to Call of Duty, and I even spotted a comment by YouTuber Merc Music that was in on this idea of Call of Duty. But I just wanted to bring this up because it was so weird, but for the first time ever under the reveal trailer for a game, I saw more people just making up memes rather than actually commenting on their opinions of it, which I just thought was kind of funny. Additionally, this was supported by the fact that the World War II reveal trailer was the second most liked Call of Duty trailer of all time within just 24 hours up to that point, and it had been clear that the people had spoken and that boots on the ground was the more favorable option of gameplay. However, on April 26, 2017, Zombies would once again officially be announced to the public with this teaser image, and while the reaction was a little different depending on who you talk to. For instance, there were YouTubers such as Murder Show who absolutely did not like the idea of the Zombies mode returning, stating he was tired of the mode and wanted a completely different third mode rather than the traditional zombies. Within the comments though, I won't lie, I saw plenty of people who were disagreeing with their statement and saying how much they liked like zombies. There was even this dude who said he was getting tired of people camping in corners in multiplayer and that it was a nice change of pace. And honestly, positivity was about the only thing I saw from there. There were really only a select few who were opposed to the idea of zombies being in the game, but for others, zombies was a fantastic idea and should be included. But then the trailer would officially release on July 20th, 2017, and well, this is probably the most unique reaction to a trailer I have seen so far. I didn't really see positive nor negative comments, but rather I saw people saying how scared they were to actually play the game because of how much scarier it looked compared to the other experiences we had seen with Treyarch and the other two adaptations. Yeah, I'm not kidding, loads of these comments were here stating how they thought it would be the scariest zombies mode we would ever get, and it honestly was, but it actually seemed like people liked it for this reason alone. I even spotted a comment by Mr. Raffle Waffles himself that stated it was everything he could have asked for and more, so clearly it was a relatively positive trailer that was liked by a good majority of the community. But nearly a month later, on August 25th, 2017, Call of Duty World War II would release to the public, and with it, the most terrifying zombies mode of all time and its release map, the Final Reich. And despite the overwhelming excitement for a brand new terrifying zombies experience, the best comments I saw were relatively mixed about the subject overall. There were numerous positives, such as people like this guy who said that it was a hard mode, but that he loved it for it, and it even got to the point where this dude said it was better than Treyarch Zombies. I also saw this comment that said they digged the map because of how different it was to Treyarch Zombies, and overall, just like nearly every other Call of Duty game, the reaction initially was extremely positive. However, this did not come without any pushback, and one of the biggest complaints that I saw from the general community about the Final Reich was that they felt that there were too many special zombies in the map, which is reflected on in this comment by Rock. And honestly, I was pretty surprised to see this, not because of the fact someone was complaining about special zombies, but because of the fact that this is strikingly similar to the complaints many of us have about modern zombies. Recently on stream, I played the Black Ops 7 Zombies experience on Ashes of the Dam for the first time, and one of my biggest complaints was the fact that it felt like the Zersa, or the bear, was being utilized a little too much within the gameplay. And even if we look back to Black Ops 6, it was so bad to a point where multiple patches had to be put in place because of the overwhelming negativity surrounding boss zombies. It was pretty weird for me to see people complaining about it all the way back then, and for Treyarch to see this and do what they did for Black Ops 4, but we'll get there. Another common complaint I saw was that people could not get the Jack-in-the-Box utility out of the mystery box in the game, which, if you don't know, is essentially the monkey bomb, which seemingly was a problem at the launch of the map. And for the more involved and experienced zombies player, I saw this complaint on a video made by YouTuber Greg FPS, who said that he did not like how the map essentially walked you through the Easter egg when completing it, and how he did not like how the hardcore version of this Easter egg was essentially the same one with a couple extra steps. So overall, while the Final Reich was not necessarily the best launch map in the world, people generally liked the classic zombies experience that had been promised by the developers and were curious as to where the next map would go. However, the problem with this is that despite the mode being released in August, its first DLC would not come until all the way into the latter half of January in the next year. Yeah, pretty crazy, and it might be one of the biggest gaps in DLC content for zombies in the entire history of the mode, but when the trailer released for the map, it seemed like people didn't really seem to care all that much. It was a little weird. Maybe it was because people had been burnt out by Call of Duty as a whole because of Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare previously, or there was Prime Fortnite to play, but I guess time passed so quickly that people did not realize that DLC was coming 5 months after the release of the game. Anyways, comments were generally excited. Once again, I saw people saying how they loved how it was a horror experience that aimed to scare you, and I even saw this dude saying how it looked lit. This did not stop the negative comments though, and similar to the sentiment around Infinite Warfare, there were plenty of people saying how they missed Treyarch rather than the zombies being developed by other studios. But anyways, the map would release in late January, and oh boy, this map was received extremely negatively by almost every single party involved. I saw endless people saying how the map was trash, how boring it was, and how it felt like it was ripped straight out of a multiplayer map. I saw comments such as this one by WWW Wario that said that it was one of the most boring maps he has ever played because of the fact it introduced nothing new to the game whatsoever, and I even saw this guy who said that people should just stick to Overwatch because of how bland the map was. It even got to the point where Mr. Raffle Waffles posted a 32-minute video on a rant strictly about the Darkest Shore and how poor it was, so that that should probably say a lot as to how people viewed the map. There were some, if not very little positives, however. I saw a very slim amount of people saying that the map layout was good or that it seemed at least interesting, and YouTuber John Rizzo was additionally positive about the map, stating this in his review video of the map.
I'm a fan of the Darkest Shore.
But guys, this might be one of the worst reactions I have ever seen for a zombies map in the history of this series, and that is saying a lot considering we have been put up against maps like Beast from Beyond. But with that leads us into the Shadowed Throne, and for some reason, things look like they were about to turn around. When looking at the trailer for this particular map, wait, yeah, so just like what we saw with Infinite Warfare Zombies and Attack of the Radioactive Thing, the Shadowed Throne actually never got its own trailer just like every other map in the game for some reason, and was lumped in with the rest of the multiplayer DLC, and this time it was actually even worse because of the fact the Zombies portion of the DLC trailer was only a good 30 or so seconds long. Although it was difficult, there were some comments reacting to the Zombies portion, such as this guy who said that the new map looked good, and this guy who said he was so ready for more zombies. I honestly was kind of surprised to see this because of how negative people were at the end of the last DLC in the Darkest Shore, but it seemed like people were actually relatively excited. And well, when the map released, this sentiment was generally carried over. I saw a bunch of overall positivity for this map in general. I saw this dude saying how it was his favorite content-wise because of how there were little Easter eggs to get things, and I saw this dude who said that it looked a lot like Der Eisendrache in a lot of ways, which was extremely positive. I saw a lot of comparisons to Gorod Krovi with this map more than anything though, and that was an extremely good thing. It was mentioned in a video by Greg FPS, and he rated it an extremely good rating of 9 out of 10, so it is safe to say this map was a general success to a wider community. And even YouTubers like Mr. Raffle Waffles, who mind you had just made a 32-minute rant about the Darkest Shore, said that they would recommend this map and that he liked where the map was going for the rest of World War II Zombies moving forward. That does not mean there were no negatives, however, and in fact I saw a lot of people stating the main complaint that the map was a little small and that the atmosphere was lacking slightly, with this guy even saying he liked the Darkest Shore more, which is a crazy take. But anyways, John Rizzo additionally brings up a point in his video that the special zombie rate was too much for the size of the map, which once again is a problem we are hearing over and over. Overall though, this map was seen in a positive light. I would probably say it is quite literally the Gorod Krovi of this game in a literal and metaphorical sense, as it quite literally revived the hype for the game while also being just like Gorod Krovi's setting wise. But unfortunately, that leads us into the Tortured Path, and just like its name, it was not fun looking at how people reacted to this map. But before that, let's look at the trailer, which actually got its own trailer outside of the DLC map pack trailer, and while the comments were once again very positive. I saw a bunch of people saying how the aesthetic of the maps alone looked fantastic and that they were excited for the gameplay. I even saw this comment made by the Gaming Revolution that predicted that this would be the best map in the game, and yeah, I'll just leave it there. When the map came out with its new objective-based mode, it is safe to say that people did not like this mode. I saw not one, but multiple Reddit posts saying that this map was literally the worst zombies experience of all time. And I mean, that is saying something. And the worst thing is that people were agreeing in the comments. I even saw this dude who said that the only reason he wasn't calling it the worst was because it wasn't technically a traditional zombies map. But the negativity ranged from a wide spectrum. While there were people saying it was the worst zombies experience of all time, there were others who were just saying that they thought it was not worth buying it, or that it just seemed like a dull experience. However, even through all of this, there were rays of sunshine who liked the map for the new experiences it presented, such as WWW Wario once again saying that the mode was surprisingly fun to him, and this guy who said it was a fun twist to the zombies mode. But to be completely honest, the negatives heavily outweighed the positives. People just did not really seem to care for the objective-based zombies, and overall it was not the most negative ever, but it certainly was not positive. That finally brings us to the last map of the game though, the Frozen Dawn, and once again this trailer managed to find its way at the end of a DLC map pack trailer like the Shadowed Throne, which meant it was really only like 30 seconds. And I mean, just like every other trailer, people were really excited for this version of zombies. I saw a lot of people saying that the zombies part looked great and the zombies part gave them chills, or that it looked really good. But honestly, this was just so weird for me. Obviously, it is completely okay to have an opinion on something and whatnot, but the lack of negative comments was weird because of how bad both the Darkest Shore and the most recent map, the Tortured Path, were received. Like, the positivity is fantastic, I just found it a little strange because it was almost as if people forgot the previous maps even existed. But this map came out and the community reaction was relatively positive overall, I would say. There were plenty of people saying the map was pretty good for what it offered aesthetically and how it was a great conclusion to the World War II Zombies mode as a whole. I saw this comment specifically by a Sucker Punch that stated that he recognized the map was overshadowed by Black Ops 4's release and how it was a map he liked returning to. It doesn't mean negatives were not there though. There were people who just simply saw the map as meh and nothing more, and honestly I think that is probably the best way to end off this World War II Zombies video. Alright, so Black Ops 4 had the extremely daunting task of living up to the hype, expectations, and overall quality presented within the Black Ops 3 experience in almost every single aspect. Excluding the campaign, the Black Ops 3 experience at the time was regarded as one of the best in the series, and combined with the fact that people had to wait a whole 3 years for this game to eventually come out, people were hungry for that Treyarch experience, especially within the Zombies mode. But I am getting a little ahead of myself. The previous Call of Duty World War II generally did not live up to the hype seen at its launch, as with its marketing being propaganda towards a return of old Call of Duty, people felt as if the game was spiraling into way too many directions and needed a base point to establish itself once again. And well, that would come with Black Ops 4, as apparently even the developers noticed this and decided to capitalize on the excessive want for a new Treyarch title with a teaser for the game dropping a month and a half after the release of World War II's second DLC. And my goodness, the positivity and overwhelming excitement was literally through the roof. I saw endless comments of people saying how they were so excited for the game. And guys, just for some context, this teaser was literally a 33-second long video of old Call of Duty trailers overlaid onto the Black Ops 4 logo, and yet still people were absolutely freaking out over the idea that this game even existed. If that does not tell you enough as to how people felt about the game, I have no idea what will. But at the end of this trailer, there was an important note that mentioned that the community reveal event would be taking place nearly 2 months later on May 17th, and this led people to absolute insanity and excitement going up to the game even more with the thought of a reveal coming so soon. When it was time for this reveal event, it was safe to say that the turnout was absolutely not disappointing for Call of Duty whatsoever, as despite the fact that in-person attendance wasn't extraordinary by any means, as there was about 750 to 1,000 people, the live stream showing off this reveal would be single-handedly the most watched game reveal in Call of Duty history, with only Black Ops 6 passing it up just recently, I believe. Additionally, it would be #1 on trending for Twitter pages worldwide, so the real question is, what content was revealed? Well, besides the boring multiplayer and campaign stuff, for the first time ever, Zombies actually got its own section of this reveal event, and who else but Jason Blundell would step up to the mic and talk about the mode in the game. There was nothing but positives that was said during the entire 8-minute Zombies got its own time, including the introduction of custom mutations, a new way to play zombies that would allow you to customize literally everything in a match, callings, and never before seen looks at 2 of the 3 launch maps, 9 and Voyage of Despair. However, easily the most hype portion of this event came with the unexpected reveal of Blood of the Dead, the Mob of the Dead remaster people had been practically begging for ever since the release of Chronicles and Black Ops 3 Zombies, and yeah, just take a look for yourself. As you can clearly see, people went berserk at the release of this information, and I mean honestly, who couldn't? This easily was the most content people were getting from a Zombies mode at its launch. I mean, like, seriously, 3 maps is insane. Under numerous recap Reddit posts, I did see a lot of excitement for the new crew as well, as with the Chaos crew, people found that Shaw and Scarlet seemed to be extremely interesting characters with interesting backgrounds, with this guy even saying that Shaw reminded him of Richtofen. I even saw this comment that said that he was Richtofen's grandfather, which, yeah, definitely is not true. Anyways, what you need to know is that the information presented at this reveal event, while grandiose, actually was not all that was to come for the content in the game, and realistically, people were just getting started. A couple months later, in the October of 2018, some Zombies YouTubers such as Mr. Raffle Waffles, NoJ456, and Mr. T Lexify were flown out to Treyarch Studios to play every single one of the launch maps early before anyone had access to it only a couple days early. And once again, the hype was literally through the roof. I mean, literally just look at this first gameplay by Milo. He literally was just giddy standing in the spawn room for the first time, which, mind you, had literally no connection to the original Mob of the Dead at all. Oh, and I also just wanted to point this out, but like MC Sports Hawk, who was another YouTuber, was just in the background tweaking out of pure excitement, and I mean, like, that has to mean something. But they didn't just get to play this early, they got to play every single map the game had to offer, even the secret 4th launch map that had not even been revealed until these guys got to play it early, which was just genuinely insane to see. But really quick, this doesn't really relate to the video all that much, but let me just point out how in touch Jason Blundell was with the community at this moment in time. Like, Jason was literally in the room for some of the games they were playing and actually sitting down and having discussions with some of the YouTubers there, and that is just something that we don't get nowadays, unfortunately. While Black Ops 7 is heading in the right direction with these dev talks, it would be really nice to have some one-on-one interaction, even if it is only with the bigger YouTubers, to ensure that the developers stay in the loop. Anyways, obviously the reaction in every single one of the comment sections for these videos were once again going completely insane. So many people were saying how the game was looking good and that the graphics were extremely impressive, and it is safe to say that the hype literally could not have been any higher. There were YouTubers quite literally posting like 7 or 8 times a day. It was genuinely insane for the zombies community, and of course under each and every one was even more positivity. So it is important to know that this game, if it wasn't clear enough, was being held to quite literally the highest standard possible. However, there was an underlying problem that was only brought to light slightly by a couple YouTubers who played the game early. One of which was Mr. T Lexify, who brought up in a video about his time there that the game was extremely buggy and that certain aspects of it didn't seem to play right while they were at Treyarch. Additionally, there were people getting fired from Treyarch left and right, one of which being an Easter egg QA tester who actually started to leak some of the Easter egg steps early before the map even came out to the public. This was a telltale sign, and although many people didn't know it at the time, this would be extremely consequential moving forward. But finally, on October 12, 2018, the big day would happen. All of the launch maps would release, and it was go time. Everybody immediately was overwhelmed with content, as since there was a total of 4 launch maps, each with their own Easter egg, people didn't know what Easter egg to go for first, and all kind of scrambled around for worlds first. So people got on, played, and then no, oh god, no. Remember the issues I mentioned were brought up in kind of a side comment by some YouTubers? Yeah, they were present here and bumped up to 1 million. Numerous crashes across all platforms was devastating a number of high round games, casual games, and more importantly, Easter egg runs that would see almost everyone crashing while playing their games seemingly at random intervals. The term blue screen became taboo in the zombies community at this time, essentially meant to represent the crashes that would happen on PlayStation 4, as it would take you to this screen. It literally did not matter what map you turned to, they were all devastated by this, but I did still want to look into how people reacted to each map outside of this, but the crashes are an extremely important piece of how people generally reacted, so keep that in mind. The first map I'll cover is Voyage of Despair, which initially was received with extreme praise under its YouTube trailer for its epic nature and just super cool setting with the Titanic. Initially though, with the release of this map, people were generally just not happy with it. I saw people such as 8 who was saying that he thought the map design was just not fun at all, and this guy who said that the map was essentially wasted potential. This idea of wasted potential was seen in a lot of places that I saw. People just seemed like the tragedy of what the sinking of the Titanic was just was not capitalized on in the map enough, which I actually still completely agree with nowadays. However, it seemed like with time, this map started to grow on people once they learned the layout, with people such as Rizzo saying that he actually really began to like the map more with more attempts, and this deleted comment that says that everyone was hating on it but that he actually liked it. Overall though, compared to other launch maps, Voyage of Despair kind of fell into the curse of Shadows of Evil in the sense that the map was too complex for a wider audience, but conversely this map never evolved to the love Shadows of Evil receives now, and I personally think that is okay. But let's talk about 9, because this one was the map Voyage of Despair was mainly being compared to. Being the other Chaos map in the launch of the game, 9 seemed to just have a lot more popularity than Voyage of Despair because, as stated by a deleted comment on Reddit, the map was just easy to navigate and had an easy access to the Pack-a-Punch. Because of this overall simplicity, people were loving this so much more than Voyage of Despair. I saw posts like this that said 9 was a 10 out of 10 map, and this one that said 9 was the best map in Black Ops 4 Zombies. People really just seem to love this map, and who couldn't? I mean, the map is set in a gigantic gladiator arena with fire and cool zombie types, and even this guy guy pointed out that the crowd in the map that cheers you on was one of his favorite parts of the mode. Unfortunately, however, the negatives were still here, especially when talking about one of the worst balancing issues, the tigers. As pointed out by this comment, the tigers on the launch of this map were insanely overpowered, essentially being able to take the player down with one singular hit, which decimated people's opinions of this map firsthand. But besides that, I didn't see many negatives, so I would say that even though we haven't gotten to the other maps yet, people thought this was the best launch map. But then comes the most well-known and easily the most anticipated, and well, this one would unfortunately suffer the consequences of the crashes more than any other map. Blood of the Dead was a very polarizing map. At first, people loved it because they were going back to Alcatraz to relive the memories of Mob of the Dead, but when the nostalgia cleared, people felt like the map was left with, well, nothing. This was said in this comment that said that the map felt like there was just too much empty space, saying how Mob of the Dead was much better at this issue specifically. It even got to the point where I saw people saying that Blood of the Dead was the worst map in Black Ops 4, which was just insane because, mind you, this was supposed to be the best map in the game. I did see some comments though saying that the map was good through a gameplay experience perspective, so there were some positives. However, the thing out of the whole map that got the most positivity was most certainly the end cutscene for the map, which actually got to the point where it moved some people to tears because of the emotional weight it held. I saw people such as Raya who was saying that they got straight up chills from the cutscene, and honestly, I did too. It was a fantastic way to end the map and one of the hardest Easter eggs of all time. But that leads us into Classified, the outcast of the group, as you had to pay money to access this map, and well, the reaction was a little mixed. I saw some comments like this one that said that he thought Classified was an amazing map, and this one that said it was the best map in the game. Unfortunately, however, the biggest problem that plagued this map was once again the crashes, and this one was quite literally unavoidable because of the fact that you had to get to round 150 for the Easter egg, which was just not possible at the launch of the game because of the crashes. Noah J456 did get it, but he literally had to use glitches to achieve it, which is just the unfortunate reality because this map deserved a whole quest like what is said in this comment. People just did not like this Easter egg whatsoever. In fact, people were furious at it because of how much time they sunk into hunting for one, and it was just an unfortunate situation. But that was the launch of the game all at once, and although there were some small victories, the hype and large expectations that had been built up had not been lived up to, and the unfortunate reality is that it seemed things would only go downhill from here. Obviously, the launch of Black Ops 4 was not what the developers had hoped. However, despite this, they still had to have some maps in development during this time to ensure that they would keep a steady release cycle throughout the game. And they did, as with the release of a trailer for... wait, hold on. Yeah, so there was actually no trailer for the new map before it released. In fact, there was quite literally zero marketing for this map before it even came out. I literally have no idea what Treyarch were thinking with this, and it is truly unfortunate because the reaction to the map suffered because of it. Dead of the Night would officially be released on December 11th, and with it, a complete misinterpretation of what the community was begging of the developers ever since the launch of the game. This map was extremely complex. It had a total of 28 parts that could be picked up all around the map, which would total to literally hundreds of locations. This was reflected on in this deleted comment that said that he liked the overall aesthetic of the map, but had problems when it came to the amount of parts that would ultimately feel like a chore. Additionally, I saw this comment that was complaining about the vampires that were exclusive to this map and how they would just activate a dying wish almost instantly, which was of course annoying. But honestly, for the people that stayed after the horrific launch, I found that they actually enjoyed the map pretty well and really only had a couple problems here or there. Like this guy who said that he loved the map but had a problem with the Pack-a-Punch quest, and this dude who said he had a problem with the vampires. But overall, community sentiment surrounding the map itself was not too terrible, although there were certainly glaring issues, and for a map that got zero marketing before its release, it didn't do too bad. That leads us into Ancient Evil, an absolute stellar map in my opinion by the way, and this map actually was a slight improvement on the marketing side because it actually got a trailer before the map came out, believe it or not. But under the trailer, I actually saw a lot, and I mean a lot of people just reminiscing on the old days of zombies, saying things like, remember when you would just hop on zombies and get to round 10, or other comments like that. If it hasn't become abundantly clear at this point, people really just did not like how complex the maps were in this game. People really just needed an experience that would be simple, and unfortunately, Treyarch overestimated how how invested people were with the mode following Black Ops 3. But there were a couple people saying that it was a good looking map, and I mean honestly people were just worried more about the gameplay more than anything. The map finally released a couple days later though, and the reaction was not too bad actually from the overall community. I saw this comment from Human that said it was his favorite map in the game, and another one from this deleted comment that agreed with this sentiment even though he had only played a couple of games. And I mean even in the review posted by Mr. Raffle Waffles, he said that
the ancient evil is a breath of fresh air.
The community seemed to be really pleased with this map, but the problem was that at this point, the community who were there at launch majorly had kind of just left the game. People were just uploading less and less zombies content over the life cycle of the game, and it had been clear that the popularity for the mode was going down rapidly, and with it, the funding for the mode. The funding that was required for awesome cutscenes like the ones we saw in Blood of the Dead and all the Chaos maps simply was reduced significantly, and as you will see, this was a problem coming very soon. And that very soon would be with Alpha Omega, the fabled return of the Aether crew that people had been waiting for since the release of the game and its trailer. And of course, since this was the return of the Aether cast, there actually was a small hype revitalization that was built up for this map. I saw loads of people in the trailer comments saying how hyped they were for the map. It seemed that people were in the belief that this map would be the savior of this game, and well, that may or may not have been how it went. I saw comments like this one from Arrow that said they liked it because it finally felt like classic zombies once again after receiving everything with chaos throughout the DLC cycle. He was not the only one saying this though. I saw a lot of people saying that it was an amazing map and felt straightforward like it used to be with older experiences, and I think that is what developers were trying to accomplish, so they succeeded in that regard. The biggest problem I found people had with this map though was that, just like Blood of the Dead and Classified previously, it was yet another remake of a map we had already seen in Nuketown Zombies, which was something that was trashed extensively in comment sections that I saw. People seemed to generally like it, but it left a bad aftertaste after the nostalgia wore off because of the reuse of map assets and a generally uninteresting catalog of new additions. But the final map for the game would save zombies, the Great War map people had been waiting for ever since Revelations, and oh boy, this is definitely not the Great War map we were hoping for. For the final map in this game, it was expected that the story would end on this huge grandiose setting with epic battles and giant wars and whatnot, but what the community ended up getting was just a Call of the Dead remake, which was a little disappointing to a good majority of the community. I think a little disappointing is kind of an understatement. There were a lot of people just slamming this in the trailer for the map. Numerous people were bringing up the Great War map and just saying how they were overall disappointed with this announcement. And well, when this map released, the best way I can possibly describe it, taking the words from a Tim Hansen review of the map, was bittersweet. Yes, people were getting extremely emotional throughout the Easter egg. People such as JC Backfire cried for several minutes on stream even before he got to the final cutscene, and you could tell this map meant a lot to people. But besides that, people really just wanted an ending that actually felt like it was deserved, not returning to the Call of the Dead location to replay a map they had played 8 years ago at this point, and the community felt kind of cheated in a sense. There were a lot of people saying how they felt that Treyarch should have just waited for the next game to end the story. Black Ops 4 Zombies thus ended on a bittersweet note, one that was nice to let the characters go in a way that felt conclusive, but on a map that people never truly asked for. Alright, so Cold War Zombies was a game that was extremely divisive for the Call of Duty Zombies scene, as this mode had to follow up the disappointment and general distaste of the newer direction Zombies was heading with Black Ops 4. As stated in my last video, which had a lot of content to cover, Black Ops 4 as a whole was killed by a million smaller issues within and outside of the game itself, whether it be simple things like crashes or more expensive things like the growing popularity of Fortnite. Developers had obviously noticed this popularity of the Battle Royale genre, of course, and followed the interpretation of Black Ops 4's attempt at a Battle Royale in Blackout with a more refined experience simply titled Warzone, which would be seen for the release of Modern Warfare 2019 shortly after Black Ops 4 ended. This point was extremely important leading up to Cold War, however, because many people were questioning whether or not the game would follow the immense popularity of Modern Warfare 19 and its refined mechanics and engine, or would stick to their Treyarch style of gameplay, not just in the multiplayer, but of course the zombies as well. However, past all the community gossip leadership and conversations, there were two main problems that would ultimately define this game as a whole. For starters, Cold War itself was not even meant to be a Black Ops game. If you recall, Black Ops 4 released literally only 2 years ago at this point in 2018, and for Treyarch to come out with another game just 2 years after would be absolutely insane for the community as a whole. But the reason this happened was that because this was initially a game that was being co-developed by Raven Software and Sledgehammer Games, and when they had disagreements, they dropped all their dirty laundry off to Treyarch. But definitively the bigger reason there was a problem with Cold War was because, well, COVID-19 existed. Yep, that's right. If it wasn't enough for Treyarch to handle, they not only had to create a new game, but they had to do so from the comfort of their own homes due to the quarantine the world experienced in 2020 during the middle of March. So, combined with all of these factors, this game was essentially doomed for failure, but yet there was still hope with the release of the reveal trailer for the game. And honestly, believe it or not, people were excited because of this reveal trailer. In the comment section under the video, I saw people saying, "Can't wait, this game looks sick and this game will save Call of Duty." But it wasn't just restricted to comments. Numerous Reddit posts were posted discussing the reveal trailer, and I saw comments such as this one that said that this had to be the coolest reveal Call of Duty had ever done. There were also a good amount of people saying how they felt it was a sigh of relief seeing the Treyarch art style, as it had been a worry before the game came out that it would copy the graphical discoloration of the Modern Warfare series because of its popularity, but that did not turn out to be the case. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that this would be the first Call of Duty game to come out on the newly released PS5 and Xbox Series X. Well, that is if you could get your hands on one. But because of this, the trailer in the eyes of many looked fantastic graphically, with numerous people like this guy saying that the graphics actually look good. So it is safe to say that, combined with the nostalgia filled within this trailer, people were excited, but there was something missing. Obviously, it usually is never shown in the reveal trailers, but people genuinely didn't even know if zombies was going to be in Cold War. Yeah, there was this weird period before its reveal that saw people genuinely questioning if zombies would even see a continuation. As with the ending of Black Ops 4 Zombies, it was thought that zombies as a whole could be left behind entirely. But of course that did not happen, as with the release of both the trailer and the first look, zombies was definitely confirmed to be in the game, and well, there was so much going on. Since the developers had looked at Black Ops 4 and saw that the community disliked the complexity and overall systems that it presented, they logically decided to completely change up the system as a whole, allowing you to start with whatever weapon you wanted, use kill streaks, and even load in with whatever character you ended up buying from the COD store with your sweet money. The reaction to this though was actually extremely mixed in literally every single area. On the one hand, people such as Racer were saying things like zombies is making a comeback, and there was also Dave who said that it was a perfect mix of old and new, and then there was also this guy whose wife left him. Anyways, it even got to the point where people like Cal were saying that they had them sold at the idea of free DLC in general. However, I won't lie to you guys, negativity for the new systems they brought to the table with this reveal was very overpowering. For instance, easily the biggest problem without a doubt that I saw was that people despised the idea of loadouts in zombies. This was very interesting for me to see personally, as for someone such as myself who criticizes the modern loadout system to this day literally 5 years later, I am surprised to see this hate. But yeah, it was real, and people all over the comments of the first look video were saying that they would completely ignore the system entirely and spawn with a pistol. I promise you guys this is no hyperbole. I saw so many people saying that they were not interested in this loadout idea and that they would rather start with a pistol. It was just absolutely insane the hate this was receiving. It extends past the comments though, as I saw people like Brian saying that he thought loadout weapons were extremely disappointing, and Porter saying the idea of the system worried him. There were people completely ignoring the systems changes though, like this guy who was more worried about the fact that Nocturne and Toten was even here. Ultimately, however, the main thing I saw was that this game was liked by a lot of people, but there always had to be that one but in there. There was not many comments at all saying how they were excited for the game as a whole, instead saying things like not a fan of loadouts or streaks, but everything else looked good. Contrary to other experiences, most likely since this was an entirely different interpretation of the mode, people were naturally extremely skeptical about this game going up to it. But as with every other release, there was just so much hype, and I mean, just look at this.
What is that? What? The bricks are cats! The bricks are cats! Oh, what the? What?
That was it until launch, however, and despite all the criticisms for the new mechanics, people just had to wait and see how it truly played. The release of Call of Duty Cold War would finally happen on November 13th, 2020, and with it, the new launch zombies experience on the map D Machine. And well, despite the overwhelming criticism before the game, people genuinely actually seemed to be enjoying the game at its launch. So many people were saying how the game was objectively better than Black Ops 4, how the game felt really smooth in terms of gameplay, and how the game was so simple that it was fun. It even got to the point where people were saying that it was the most fun they had ever had in a zombies mode on its launch in the history of the entire game. Big YouTubers like Tim Hansen, who made his rise before and during this time, was genuinely enjoying the mode firsthand, saying things like,
"It is the most replayable zombies experience ever."
Others like Mr. T-Lexify actually made a comment about the mechanics in his first playthrough, saying,
"I like these Warzone mechanics in zombies. I think they play really well."
Bigger YouTubers clearly loved it, and looking at Reddit posts, I saw numerous people literally typing whole essays as to why they thought it was a fantastic game, and I'm not kidding you guys, this may have been one of the most successful, if not the most successful launch of all time. There was little to no pushback or dislike. However, I did see people like Arkham saying that he did not like the new point system whatsoever, and there was a large amount of people complaining about Cold War as a whole that didn't directly relate to zombies. Mainly the problems with the fact that the majority of people were playing on last gen consoles because PS5s were selling like hotcakes, and a lot of people were also complaining about the massive file size of the game, which is a problem that seems to get worse and worse every year. But besides that, Cold War Zombies was a success at its launch, but we would just have to wait for DLC 1. And well, wait the zombies community did. In fact, the zombies community waited all the way until February 4th for the official release of the first DLC of this game. That does not necessarily mean there wasn't content though. Of course, there were things like Jingle Hells that was received with relative praise on both accounts, but that also doesn't mean the content was substantial enough to support the community's hunger for a new map. But finally, Firebase Z would come out, and of course the first DLC is often regarded as the most important DLC in the game, and the hype needed to be lived up to. And honestly, although it was not a Der Eisendrache by any means, the community seemed to generally like this map for what it had to offer. I saw this dude with a very early impression saying that he had a great first attempt and liked the map design and atmosphere. I even saw this dude saying how he thought that the new invasion that is exclusive to this map was really interesting and that he enjoyed the challenge it offered. However, just like prior to the launch of this game, there were a lot of people who liked the majority of it, but found one issue that really seemed to turn them away, which in this map was the amount of bosses that would spawn. The boss spam on this map was absolutely deplorable. It could be debatably as bad as it was on Black Ops 6 launch, but that might be a bit of a reach. Overall though, it was bad, and this is reflected on in this comment by 115 saying that they liked a lot of the aspects of the map, but the bosses, and this deleted comment that pretty much said the same thing. The biggest problem with this map though is that people felt that although they liked it, they felt it wasn't really anything new. It felt like the same experience from D Machine copy and pasted, and even though there was a new way to turn on power in the defense rounds, people just felt like it was too boring. This was reflected on in this comment by Clever, who felt the map was just too easy and that there was nothing to do after the Easter egg. Overall, throughout pretty much all of the YouTubers at the time, they were all giving it between a 6 and an 8 out of 10, which generally suggests that this map was not the best overall, but they couldn't really criticize it because it wasn't terrible. But I think this comment by Dax summarizes it the best, saying that he overall found it enjoyable, but found it worrisome how Treyarch could release 2 easy maps in a row. So I think that a definitive final sentiment is that this map was good, nothing more, nothing less, and had nothing new to offer, which worried players moving forward. But suddenly, for the first time in Zombies ever, there was a huge announcement made shortly after the release of Firebase Z in late February, and that was the release of a little mode called Outbreak. Outbreak would be a completely expansive and backwards take on the Zombies mode entirely, displacing the player from tight confined locations to quite possibly the biggest area possible with objectives along the way. If it wasn't clear already, this was being marketed more towards the Warzone player trying to get into zombies. And well, the results showed, because as of the time of its release, Outbreak was the most played zombies experience of all time. Yes, this means that it passed up all of Black Ops 3 and even the hype scene of Black Ops 4, and well, that means that this expansive experience caught the attention of a lot of people. I saw this guy who said that he felt the experience was incredible and that it was a fresh experience that he had been looking for a good while of zombies. However, for the zombies player who was looking looking at this map for a completely new experience, disappointment seemed to be the only thing people could hand out. For instance, I saw this comment by Orbalist that said that they found the map to be fun but stale after only a few attempts, and this guy who felt that the map had little to no content and was too big. YouTubers seemed to be a decent fan of this when it came out though, but to be completely honest, there were a lot of YouTubers, notably Tim Hansen, who kind of just didn't post a lot of Cold War Zombies content. In fact, I'm relatively sure he had posted only one video about Outbreak, which has since now been either deleted or privated. I even saw YouTubers like Mr. T-Lexify who said this before the release of the map.
It just kind of scares me that there is going to be no PvP aspect to this mode, because without a PvP aspect, I have a feeling it could get stale quite fast.
And I mean, even in a review by Expert Fusion, he talked for a good 5 minutes about the positives associated with the mode, but then had a near 15-minute discussion about the negatives associated with it for him personally, so that should just say a lot about how people felt overall. But at the launch of this experience, it was overall a relatively fun way to play zombies. However, as soon as the DLC progressed and the Easter egg was added, this mode fell off because of a huge lack of content present within it. But that finally brings us back to round-based, and unfortunately, this map would suffer due to the release of Outbreak, as it would not come out until 5 months later. Yeah, so while Treyarch were counting their money from Outbreak, those who were passionate about the regular zombies mode were left in the dust for nearly 5.5 months without a round-based experience. And well, with the release of Mauer der Toten, the second DLC, people felt that the map was actually pretty good. Unlike Firebase Z, which had relatively mixed receptions with a negative undertone, Mauer der Toten thrived and a lot of people seemed to like the map right off the bat. Immediately, people commented on how they really liked the atmosphere. I saw this comment by this dude saying that the atmosphere felt like Mob of the Dead to him. And even past this, people really seemed to like the music in this map as well, with both of these people saying that they really liked the music on a first impression. The Easter egg is additionally something that people were praising, as people like Devin were saying that he liked the challenge it presented compared to the other maps in the series so far. Under numerous YouTube videos, you could even see things like Cold War is back and Call of Duty Zombies is good again. And in a review by John Rizzo, he stated that,
I do really like it, but I just can't seem to love it like everyone else.
The general complaint about this map though is the same thing we have seen all year with this mode, and that is the fact that it felt like nothing necessarily new, and that the map would just get old quickly after a couple of attempts. But I think this one comment by Nothing kind of just summarizes how this game has been for the majority of people completely, saying that those who like Cold War will rate the map highly, but others will see it as just another Cold War map with just another wonder weapon. That finally brings us to the grand conclusion of Cold War though, with Forsaken, and well, this one was interesting. Forsaken was the final map in the game, and thus had to be the grand finale to the story that had been building up for Cold War Zombies up to this point, and to be completely honest, it seemed like it succeeded in that regard. I saw this Reddit post saying that Forsaken was their favorite Cold War Zombies map, stating that Forsaken actually made them come back rather than what the previous maps had with their disappointing outcomes. The aesthetics of this map really seem to be a key point, however, as this guy said that he found the map itself to be a 7 out of 10, but with the aesthetics he said it would be a 9 out of 10. There was even a dude in this comment section I saw that said that he had been very critical of Cold War, but that the Chrysalax actually felt like a really good wonder weapon next to the lightning bow on Dreisendracht. But once again, this map suffered from the idea that it was fun but got boring super quickly, which was reflected on this comment specifically, which if you have been paying attention to any degree is quite literally the same exact sentiment for every single map. This might be the first time in this review series that I have seen this. I have never seen people have the exact same reaction for every single map that releases up to this point, but that is quite literally how it is with this game. And honestly, it might just be my own personal bias, but I think the modern systems introduced in this game were at fault. But that might just be me. That is all I've got though. Alright, so Call of Duty Vanguard was a game that was coming right off the heels of Cold War, which was a game that had one of the most interesting development cycles we have ever seen in the history of the franchise. Obviously, this was for a couple of reasons that we mentioned in the video, but a huge one was the sudden appearance of COVID-19, a virus you are all familiar with that wasn't so kind to video game developers as it was to everyone else. It was honestly kind of a miracle that Cold War even got pumped out with the quality that it did. But anyways, due to the obligation to have yearly early releases established within the Call of Duty cycle by Modern Warfare 19, there obviously would be a new Call of Duty game right on the horizon for people to experience immediately afterwards, and well, even COVID couldn't stop this from happening. And even through the life cycle of Cold War, the newest installment in the Call of Duty series was announced on August 19th, 2021 with Call of Duty Vanguard. In the traditional style that for whatever reason seems to continue, this game would be first revealed in an event scene in Warzone at the time, but would eventually get its own reveal trailer following the event. And while the reaction to this in the comment section was not very good right off the bat. I mean, people had barely even seen footage for this game and were already hating on the idea of it, and there were so many people putting things in quotes like, keep your expectations low and you will never be disappointed, or never pre-order a Call of Duty game, things like that. I saw a comment by Rambo that just said he was not going to be pre-ordering the game, and I mean guys, these are the top comments that were getting thousands upon thousands of likes, so this clearly represents that people were feeling this way about it before it even released. I saw these really funny comments though, like this one by Dexter who said that he couldn't wait to see people sprinting with a neon pink MG42, and this guy who said he remembered his grandpa telling him about sliding around corners in the 40s. And as fun as this is to make fun of, this literally is what the game became of eventually, and it honestly was just unfortunate because people knew exactly what would be happening in the game before it even came out. I mean, it's not like this was an Infinite Warfare trailer 2.0 or something. In my opinion, the trailer itself wasn't even all that bad, but it was just the sentiment around Call of Duty at the time. Plus, even though the concept of going back to World War II was cool, people just absolutely hated the idea of going back yet again for another World War II Call of Duty, which is reflected on in this Reddit comment that I saw that said his excitement would dissipate if it was just another historical game. If it hasn't become abundantly clear, the concept of both Modern Warfare 19 and Cold War simultaneously initiated a new era of Call of Duty for some people, but also killed it at the same time for a lot of people who used to love the game. But there was one community who was still questioning if they would get any representation, and that was of course the Zombies community. Following the relatively boring and admittedly lackluster DLC of Cold War, people were actually intrigued to see if Vanguard would have a Zombies mode. As of course with the return to the World War II time period, the development team could create something akin to a World at War, or maybe even another World War II Zombies. And well, to the extreme surprise of everybody, Zombies would be a mode in this game, which would be a completely new take on the Zombies mode that we had seen from almost every other game before it. And yeah, people were excited, and wait. Hold on. Why is Treyarch working on another Call of Duty? Yeah, so after the general mixed reception to both Infinite Warfare Zombies and World War II Zombies, other development studios straight up just gave up on the idea of zombies entirely and decided to, once again, hand their dirty laundry off to Treyarch to develop the Zombies mode for them. While this is not necessarily such a terrible idea and concept, this led to numerous consequences in the future, but with the Zombies reveal, how did people really react? In the reveal trailer that dropped in the mid-October of 2021, I saw nearly endless comments saying things like, remember when Zombies was good, or bring back Jason Blundell, or I miss the Mob of the Dead and Origins days. I wish I could tell you there were positives here, but to be completely honest, there wasn't a whole lot of it. And I mean, honestly, the developers were kind of shooting themselves in the foot by remaking multiplayer maps into zombies, which was reflected on in this comment by Mac. It just never ended. People were saying that this was nothing more than a warning to not get the game, and yeah, it was pretty rough. Something funny I realized about this trailer though is that the official Call of Duty YouTube channel actually removed it from their channel, meaning the only available trailer that I found was on the Xbox YouTube channel, which I think is just a bit of foreshadowing as to how this actually went. Or it could be because of the music licensing, but you know, we don't need to talk about that. The first look remains on the channel though, for whatever reason, and here is where we have just a bit of positivity, with people like Timebuck saying that the lighting looked incredible, and ZH who said that he had heightened expectations because it was a Treyarch project. So it's pretty safe to say that, although it was certainly Zombies, the amount of hype going into this game was extremely minimal, and all people could really do was brace for impact.
Chat, I'm gonna be straight with you, chat. I'm gonna be straight with you here. just don't buy the game yet.
Call of Duty Vanguard would officially release on November 5th, 2021, and with it, the new launch zombies map Duran Fong. This new experience copied some of the systems of Cold War with the salvage and pack-a-punch tiers, but created an entirely new system outside of the traditional round-based system that was seen in every zombies experience prior, creating a heightened focus on objectives similar to the Outbreak mode that had released in Cold War. Additionally, things like the perk system were changed, as not only did they completely redesign the machines to be admittedly cool looking fountains, but they added an upgrade system that would allow the player to upgrade their perks in the match rather than outside of the game like in Cold War. Anyways, these new systems were, well, how do I put this? Absolutely disliked and hated by way too many people at launch. I mean, just one quick search at a Reddit post from its launch and I immediately found someone saying that this version of zombies was not it. In the comments of this post, nearly everybody was agreeing with this sentiment too, with Grendergan saying that he thought the zombies was really bad, and this guy saying that the multiplayer was a more attractive mode even though he mainly played zombies. I did see this comment though by Buick, who said that he saw the potential in the game mode but just found it to be extremely boring after only 20 rounds of the game, which is honestly pretty fair because doing the same objectives over and over is just terrible, especially since I'm pretty sure there were only 3 objectives on the launch of this game. I think the main problem with this game ultimately though was that the gameplay systems actually had some potential, like what was stated by Buick early, but the major problem was that this mode lacked what zombies had always had: small Easter eggs, side quests, and other little lore pieces that you could find that would spice up the game a little bit. But in this game, there was none of this. I mean, we didn't even have the ray gun or a pack-a-punch camo or even a pause button on solo at the launch of this game. Like, what? I think this comment by WW Wario summarizes it the best though, saying that there was just nothing to do, and that although the new features were cool, there was a huge lack of content. You saw what Milo said earlier, but in endless reviews, people were just bashing the game, from newer YouTubers such as Chrism.
The entire appeal of the game, I mean, if there is an appeal, is basically everything from Cold War, except it's done worse, in my opinion.
To the older YouTubers like Lex, who was sitting in a call with NoahJ456 and Milo and just ranting about the game for a good 10 minutes or so. There were even YouTubers like Tim Hansen who straight up didn't even get the game, so yeah, that's pretty rough. Everybody was just disappointed with the game. Not actually, scratch that. Everyone just did not like this game at all, and it was just such a funny time for the zombies community because the game was just laughably bad. But only time would tell as to how the developers would react to this backlash, and we would just have to wait. And yeah, if the game wasn't boring enough, we had to wait more than 3 months to get another content drop for this game in Terra Maledicta. And there was a problem I immediately noticed right off the bat. There was like almost nobody who actually played this map on a stream when it first released. You see, usually when a new map drops, there are hundreds of streams on the YouTube platform that go live that play the new map when it comes out, naturally, right? But for this, I saw literally nobody. I only saw Mr. Dalek JD playing it, and in comments under his video, I saw people saying that this was sad to see and that it looked like a free-to-play beta. But with the comments aside, I just had to go to Reddit, and I did see a couple more posts with this guy saying that Terra Maledicta was a big miss. And this comment was coming from someone who actually somewhat liked Duran Fong, so that should say a lot. I saw a comment under this saying that he got bored within 10 minutes of playing the game, and Blueprint genuinely questioning how people even like the game in the first place. However, I did see this Reddit post that said that he felt Terra Maledicta was a step in the right direction, saying he was enjoying it since there was more content. But I will say, although this dude had this opinion, there were quite a few people saying how they disagreed with this statement, so this may have just been an oddity. So yeah, really nothing new to report with Terra Maledicta, and honestly, it was crystal clear at this point that nobody really cared. But wait, what is that? No, it can't be. Round-based? Yep, so in a last-ditch effort to revive this version of zombies, Treyarch decided to release a round-based map of Shinonuma with some extra content and a main Easter egg. And well, even though this was clearly just an effort to please some of the classic fans, people seemed to actually overall enjoy it. I saw comments like this one saying that it actually looked fun even though he thought he would never say it. I even saw people saying that the map looked like it was a step in the right direction for the mode, and I mean, if this isn't blatant evidence that people prefer round-based over anything else, I don't really know what is. And I mean, Mr. Raffle Waffles, who literally just doesn't care about this game, actually said this in his review about the map.
And so it's a shock to me that Shinonuma is not just the third one on that bottom rung of the tier list. Like, it's not that bad.
In initial impression posts on Reddit, I saw people such as Is Pepsi Okay saying that this map would be one he would be playing a lot, with people like Sora agreeing in the comments about the whole project. On top of this, I saw this deleted comment saying that he was pleasantly surprised with how it played compared to the previous remasters of it, and honestly, I'm with this guy. I don't care what any of you say, this is absolutely the best version of Shinonuma that has ever been released in the entire history of the mode. It has so much content, new playable areas, and an entire Easter egg quest that, although small, just makes the map play so much better in my opinion compared to the other experiences. Now, that isn't really saying much considering I find the regular Shinonuma to be kinda boring, so seeing this one was a nice change of pace. But with that, we have one more map, and with this step in the right direction, it can't be that bad, right? Alright, so the Archon, that's not a bad name. Sounds like it'll be a pretty great map and like super unique and stuff, right? Oh, yeah, so don't even ask me how this happened, what happened for this to occur, and why this was even the case, but for some inexplicable reason, Treyarch decided that it was a good idea to take an already existing map that had released 2 DLCs ago and just add the color green to it. Yeah, I wish I was joking because they literally just took Terra Maledicta and made it green. Like, what is that? As you could expect, my first search came up with this Reddit post saying that the Archon is the worst map ever in Zombies history, saying he had never seen such laziness with a DLC ever before. I saw this dude saying that it got boring really fast, and this guy who even said that he didn't know if it could be considered a DLC map or not. There were a couple people not blatantly hating on it, such as this guy who said that it wasn't oppressive, but just kind of existed, which I would argue is even worse because there's just no reason to even like it. Like, there are some maps like Transit that are just laughably bad, but these ones just have nothing to them. But in the end, to be fair, all of this was not Treyarch's fault. They had to whip it up because Activision needed their sweet money, and honestly, at the end of the day, it was impressive that they even had a boss fight in the map. Doesn't mean it was good at all though, but the context of the situation is pretty important. Alright, so it's no secret that Vanguard was a disgrace to the reputation of Call of Duty Zombies, which was a mode that had once been so deep lore and gameplay wise just remade into a mere side mode that would take up 1 or 2 hours of boredom occasionally. However, Zombies had not always been like this. Vanguard was an oddity in the sense that nobody really cared to talk about it even when it was a live game at the time. And if people did have something to say, well, it was definitely negative. Sure, it was nice to have a new concept to the game, but what people had really been looking for at this point was a new interpretation of the beloved round-based zombies mode that we hadn't seen since Cold War at the time. However, although fans could wish for a new zombies mode, the unfortunate reality was that the next Call of Duties would be the latest and greatest installments to the Modern Warfare series, which totally wasn't a game inspired by any others whatsoever or anything like that. Now yes, Vanguard had a zombies mode, which was weird because generally the non-Treyarch games never tend to have a zombies mode, and if they do, it was a one-time oddity to never be seen of or heard of again. But this was a Modern Warfare game, an IP that had never even heard of the idea of zombies before, and one that people generally never even thought of to appear in this game. Anyways, moving aside from zombies for a second, let's just talk about the general state of Modern Warfare 3 before its release. First of all, it's important to establish that for whatever reason, there had been another Call of Duty released in 2022 known as, you guessed it, Modern Warfare 2, and was an entirely new take on the Modern Warfare series that had been established back in 2019 by the new Modern Warfare. This game, let's see, how do I put this? People just hated it. Yeah, it may have genuinely been one of the most hated Call of Duties of all time to this day. I mean, this game had so many issues. Not only did it have some of the worst graphical stylization of any Call of Duty game in the modern era, but it also featured abysmal maps and gameplay that people just genuinely hated, with one of the main ones being the fact that it was so slow, which is something I personally kind of liked about it. But anyways, Modern Warfare 2 was just not liked. People really felt like they were ripped off, and honestly, I personally don't think it would have been that bad if it wasn't supposed to be a remaster of one of the most widely regarded Call of Duty games of all time, but ultimately this just catalyzed people's feelings towards it. However, when it would be announced that a Modern Warfare game would be coming directly after it, and that it was a completely new game rather than a DLC for the already existing game, that that's when things got really ugly. This is pretty evident in the reveal trailer for Modern Warfare 3, with people like Cody blatantly calling the developers out by saying that this was just a DLC, and Madman saying he was not going to be paying a whole £70 for an update. And frankly, this is extremely valid. As pointed out by this comment, it feels like it was just a game that they were trying to portray as an entirely new experience, when in reality it just simply wouldn't be. And I don't know, I just like the Krusty Krab reference here. Anyways, I think it was the devastation of Vanguard and Modern Warfare 2 that ultimately led this community into absolute hatred and disgust for the franchise, as compared to Cold War, where there was actually excitement for the game in the comments. Here it was just all negatives. This is a trend that continues to this day, by the way. Just look at the comments under the most recent Black Ops 7 video posted on the Call of Duty channel and you'll see what I mean. I feel like that is an extremely important point to look into, because now it seems that people have taken the negative initiative towards anything they see regarding Call of Duty, and unfortunately that would bleed into zombies as well. But we're not quite there yet. Eventually a campaign premiere would feature a week or two after the reveal on August 22nd, 2023. However, there was something up that people had been noticing about this version of Modern Warfare. There had been suspiciously quite a few references to what seemed like zombies being revealed before this game, and this theory was confirmed when on September 19, 2023, a zombie cinematic trailer would be released to the public. Now pause just for a second. I want you guys to imagine that you have never seen anything about this game or the zombies mode and just step into the shoes of the people at the time. This kind of was a neat concept at first. Obviously we had not seen gameplay or anything close to it, but the idea of Modern Warfare having a zombies mode seemed kind of interesting. It was a fresh take on zombies, and maybe, just maybe, it could be better than Vanguard. And well, taking this into mind, when the cinematic trailer was released for this, I actually saw quite a few positive comments, like this one from Roland, who said that he thought the trailer looked pretty awesome, and this guy saying he was admiring how well they did the cinematics. I was kind of surprised to see this, because I vividly remember watching this trailer when it first came out and kind of being bummed at what I was seeing. Obviously it was cool to see the Requiem characters just like bodied on the table here, but other than that I didn't really feel a lot, but these people apparently did. I mean, I even saw people like Delta saying that the trailer showed him promise for the mode and how he thought it would be cool seeing the Cold War characters brought back. But well, how do I put this? When the reveal trailer for the game actually came out, the whole hype train that was started was immediately blown up. People quickly found out that yes, this was a new iteration of traditional zombies, but yes, it was also just a repurposed Outbreak. A lot of people openly disliked this in the comment sections, with this guy saying that round-based zombies was perfect and was upset that they were going away from it, and this guy saying that he thought it was dumb how they were advertising it as a completely different mode when it was so similar to Outbreak. I mean, this was crazy for me to see. People just completely gave up on the mode after seeing the reveal trailer, even though they were excited from the cinematic reveal. But yeah, it was safe to say hype was very minimal going into this. It was actually kind of funny watching people's first reaction to the gameplay and trailer, because it was just staring. Like, just look at this. But I suppose we would just have to wait and see what it looked like when we played it, and well, we would just have to wait. Modern Warfare 3 would release on November 10th, 2023, and people could finally get their hands on the strangest zombies mode they had ever seen to see how it really played. It turns out that while Modern Warfare Zombies was a shallow interpretation of Outbreak from Cold War, it was more inspired by the DMZ mode seen in Modern Warfare 2, meaning that there was now contracts, vehicles, and easily the biggest map we had ever seen in Zombies history, which yeah, just so happened to be the Warzone map as well, but just ignore that part. However, while people were criticizing this idea before the launch of the game, Modern Warfare 3 Zombies was a hit? Yep, that's right. On the launch of the game, your favorite YouTuber was grinding this game like nobody's business and actually genuinely enjoying it, working to unlock newly established schematics and a story mission that was relatively fun to go through. Mr. Raffle Waffles, Mr. Dalek JD, Noah J456, and literally everybody else was playing this game like absolutely crazy, and each were making making loads of videos of tips while playing the game and overall streams to beat certain contracts. However, I noticed something really interesting with the comments being made under the videos and with the Reddit posts being made about it as well. The general community outside of the extremely hardcore YouTubers just generally seemed to dislike the mode. I mean, I couldn't look through a Reddit post without people like Real saying that he was upset because he kept losing everything after a disconnect, and OK saying how it was stupid that you would lose everything after being kicked. I also saw people complaining about how it felt like solo players were being left in the dust, which I saw in this comment by Stungrat under a Mr. Raffle Waffles livestream. Tokyo also made a comment saying that whatever game Treyarch had coming up for their next release should be absolutely nothing like this. I mean, it even got to the point where I saw a Reddit comment by Aoli writing a very passionate review of the game. Now, through all of this, the real question is, how did this actually happen? Well, the answer lies within the grind that was required for Modern Warfare Zombies. You see, in order to achieve a playable status of the game, you had to earn these things called schematics, which would allow you to spawn into the game with a Juggernaut perk can or like a Pack-a-Punch crystal or something like that. These were essential because if you didn't have it, you would have to earn it yourself through contracts and other world events, and with only an hour on the clock, it was tough to do that on top of other things. So while the YouTubers were getting every schematic in the game, the people who had practically zero time to play the game were left in the dust completely, as in order to get out of the boring aspect of this game and get to the fun part, you really needed schematics, which required a heavy grind. However, eventually, unfortunately, this would reach a point where even the YouTubers would grow bored of the game, and it was mainly because of the fact that, well, there was nothing more to do. After grinding all of the schematics, mastering the contracts, and completing the Act 1 story mission, there was literally nothing more to do in the game. Uploads would slow down pretty heavily, and well, things were just not looking good. However, the Season 1 update for this game was right around the corner, and with it came so much new Zombies content. One of the cool main pieces of content here was the ability to go to the Dark Ether, which was such a cool experience by itself, but also contained new schematics for insanely rare items like the Ether Blade and Golden Armor Plates. And well, once again, YouTubers were absolutely eating this up. All of this new content was absolutely amazing, and the new Dark Ether area was extremely fun to go to and mess around with to get the new schematics. Even some Reddit comments were relatively excited about this one, with this guy saying that if this was the amount of content they would be getting consistently, then they would be in for a good year of zombies. I surprisingly saw this comment from Penguin saying that he was actually addicted to the mode and just could not stop playing it, which was interesting to see because of how much hate it had been getting previously. However, even though there was plenty of new content, there were still plenty of people hating on the game, such as this guy who said that it was sad seeing zombies progress like this, and this guy who was just disappointed with the timer in the zombies mode. All in all, with the content that there was, this season was honestly a relative success. However, unfortunately, it would suffer from the same fate as the launch. There was absolutely nothing stopping people from going in and completing everything there was to do with the launch of the season, and there were plenty of people who were only left with the camo grind and nothing more. So, did Season 2 fix this? Well, yeah, about that one. Zombies got absolutely no content whatsoever on the release of Season 2, which, mind you, was 2 months after the release of Season 1, and rather people had to wait until the Reloaded update to get any Zombies content whatsoever, which would be 3 months. But that isn't even the worst part, because for those who were around for Season 2, you would know that this whole season was based around zombies. I mean, we had a bunch of zombies maps, operators, heck, even The Walking Dead, but no content for the actual zombies mode. Anyways, when we did get the new content, it was just a new Dark Ether Rift and more legendary schematics, and while yes, this may have been cool, people quickly realized that the content for this game could not necessarily extend past what we got here. Safe to say, people were just not happy. I saw comments like this one saying that they felt like the developers were trolling them, and this guy who said that he wished he could return his digital copy. And believe me, it wasn't just YouTube comments. I saw people on Reddit saying that it was a joke that developers were doing a zombie season with no zombies content, and even this deleted comment who felt the exact same way. People felt cheated, and this was so bad that even content creators, who mind you had been loving the game in previous updates, just seemingly did not really care all that much about the game. So it was rough. However, there were still plenty of seasons to come, and we would just have to wait until Season 3. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, but yes, once again, the developers wouldn't release the content for Season 3 until the Reloaded update in May. It honestly was unbelievable, but for the content to release later, it has to be cool, right? Well, not really. Season 3 Reloaded brought a Dark Ether rift, a new story mission, and yep, you guessed it, a couple new legendary schematics. Like, it was cool, sure, but guys, when does this sort of content cycle stop? It's just the same thing over and over. To no surprise, people just didn't like this content. People said that the new schematics were just simply underwhelming and that they were getting worse and worse. There were plenty of people saying how the new update was mid, and yeah, it was just not a good time for the zombies community. I will say there was a small amount of excitement for this update, but it was only because people were wondering how the heck this whole birth situation was happening with Gray, and yeah, I'm just not gonna talk about that. Anyways, season 3 was just an oddity, right? Season 4 is gonna be great, and oh god. I genuinely was sitting here thinking that it couldn't get any worse, but nope, it just had to get worse. I'm not kidding you guys, the only thing they added in this season for zombies was an unstable rift. That was it. No new schematics, heck, not even a story mission. It was so bad that I'm relatively sure Mr. Raffle Waffles didn't even stream it, and other YouTubers would either follow suit or would just play it once and never touch it again. At this point, people were saying things like, I'm glad I didn't buy this dumpster fire of a game, or so happy I dropped this game. I even saw this dude pointing out the fact that on the roadmap for the season, there was a bigger square of content for cosmetics than there was for zombies, which is honestly just sad. However, something crazy would actually happen with the release of the final season, and well, they did make a decent update to the game. For the final update to the game, we got this really cool Dark Ether area, as well as a cliffhanger ending for Black Ops 6, and one of the coolest boss fights we have ever seen in zombies. Yeah, it was a pretty stacked season, and I thought it was a great update, but when I looked at the comments, the damage had clearly already been done. I saw people saying things like Modern Warfare Zombies is the biggest snooze fest, and this guy making fun of Treyarch for this kind of content when they said they would go all out. I even saw this YouTube comment saying that Zombies is really stupid now, and I don't know, I just thought that was funny. Alright, so Black Ops 6 would be the first Treyarch game to release since Black Ops Cold War back in 2020, making it a little more than 4 years since people have been exposed to the release of a Treyarch title. Obviously, before this game came out, and much earlier before this, Treyarch titles were thought to be the golden ages of all the games, whether it be multiplayer, campaign, and yes, especially zombies. And with Black Ops 6, it would of course be announced that the fabled return of round-based zombies would finally happen after the extremely strange gameplay Vanguard Zombies had, and the arguably slightly uninspired release of Modern Warfare Zombies in the year previously. As I looked at in my last video, Modern Warfare Zombies was a new take on the Zombies mode. However, it never managed to stick the landing for a good majority of the Zombies players who either found the updates to be lackluster and lazy, or those who didn't even pay any mind to it due to the fact it wasn't round-based. So with Black Ops 6 being the first return to traditional round-based zombies in over 4 years, with those 4 years presumably being used for development time, it is safe to say that the excitement for a return to this was through the roof. This hype wasn't all natural, however. If you remember back when this game was being revealed, there were multiple videos put out stating the, at the time, extremely ominous quote of "the truth lies." Call of Duty went all out for their marketing for Black Ops 6, way more than say Black Ops 7 in the previous year, because Call of Duty posted numerous videos of seemingly real-life locations, putting posters and newspapers everywhere in famous cities, which was most notably seen in New York. But it wasn't just real life. There also was a website established known as thetruthlies.com, where it would be an odd TV set that showed off numerous teasers for the game in the signature 90s aesthetic, which honestly was one of my favorite Call of Duty teasers of all time. I just love how they actually delved into the year of the game. It really made it feel authentic to the decade, and for a glimpse there, it really seemed like Treyarch was going back to Black Ops 1 again. I mean, I don't even play the campaign, and I was excited for this stuff, but I wasn't the only one. There were plenty of people such as Spaceman saying how this was hyping him up, and this dude saying that he loved the Cold War style of marketing. It was easily one of the best marketing cycles Call of Duty has ever experienced. However, as most of you know, it definitely didn't stop there. Suddenly, after every single Truth Lies channel was revealed, the website switched to a much darker tone and donned the zombies aesthetic to do the same thing it did for the campaign. This was honestly one of, if not my favorite teaser for Call of Duty Zombies. Each channel didn't really give a whole lot of information information, but with the little information we did get, I remember nights where I would slow down the clips from the channels to the slowest speed and analyze each and every one for details. But it also fit the 90s aesthetic. For instance, there was this one that was just a weather channel, but it suddenly then morphed into this, which I just thought was a cool concept. To me, it kind of felt like Call of Duty Zombies VHS tapes, which if you don't know is a type of horror that has taken over the internet in the past year due to its unsettling and terrifying nature. But I wasn't the only one who loved this. I saw comments like these under a video made by MCC saying I'm so excited, Black Ops 6 hype, and that they were so hyped for this game. With this teaser for the Gobblegum machine making its ultimate return, I saw people saying that the machine looked awesome and that the map Terminus also looked visually amazing from the limited views they had of it. So with all of these teasers, a trailer was bound to drop, and when it did, people were certainly looking forward to this mode. With people like Diablo saying that in the cinematic trailer he thought it was cool they didn't show any zombies to build the tension, and this guy saying he thought it would be a mix of Mob of the Dead and Zetsubo no Shima with a set crew, so he was happy. But easily the most hype came from one of the best zombie cinematics we have ever seen with the most unexpected map, Liberty Falls. People were going absolutely crazy for this trailer. I saw people like James saying that Call of Duty had him by the balls, and this dude saying that it was peak. It wasn't just the community though, just take a look at this.
But Edward, I already am.
So yeah, the community and the hype was literally through the roof, but of course, as you probably know, there was a little thing called Call of Duty Next, and well, it did not go as it probably should have. After the intense hype we had seen for everything, it was finally time to see gameplay, and yeah, the disappointment by a good majority of the community was insane. It was unbelievable how much people switched up on this game when they saw gameplay. So many people were saying how Liberty Falls looked like a terrible map or that it had no aura. It was crazy. I saw people in comment sections of the stream saying things like they worked so much harder making the trailer than the game, or how this map was nothing like what the trailer showed, or that this map had zero character. If it wasn't bad enough, I mean, people like Duke Dennis, a man who has no connection to Call of Duty Zombies at all, made it to round 50 at this event, which is just so funny to me to this day. So yeah, that was it before the release of the game. People were clearly upset about Liberty Falls, but that doesn't mean Terminus didn't have potential, and people just had to wait for the release. Black Ops 6 would finally release on October 25th, 2024, and with it, the two new round-based maps in Terminus and the supposedly new and improved Liberty Falls. But let's look first at arguably the more important release map here, Terminus. Terminus had extremely high expectations going into it, and with its release, people found that the supposed quote-unquote biggest zombies experience was no joke. Terminus released with a prison and lab on some remote island, which was just perfect for that traditional zombie setting, and people were honestly loving it. I saw this Reddit post by Lukey saying that he loved the atmosphere, that the map played really well, and that he thought it was harder than what was shown at COD Next. I even saw this post by Kat saying that he loved Terminus even though the Easter egg wasn't even available at the time. I saw people in first attempt streams saying things like it plays so well or looks good, but he didn't like the checkpoint markers, and overall, if there were issues, it was because of the systems of the game, such as the point system or armor system, rather than the map itself. However, there was a tiny problem on this map that was also present in the other launch map, Liberty Falls. Manglers. An enemy returning from Black Ops 3 zombies, Cold War zombies, and Modern Warfare 3 zombies had such high spawn rates in the early days of this game that it was absolutely unreal. Manglers would spawn in dozens at a time on high rounds and seemingly never stopped, and it was a tragedy of the launch of this game because of how much it affected high rounds. It even got to a point where numerous memes were made about it, such as this popular one, and this was such a huge problem that was pervasive in the high rounds of this game. But Liberty Falls was certainly different, because although there were negatives, when this map released, it ended up being a seemingly even even split between those who were not a fan of it and those who actually kind of enjoyed it. I saw Reddit comments like this one from Taffy saying it was a 9 out of 10 map, and this guy saying that he really enjoyed it because of how simple it was. And I mean, this guy said it was a 10 out of 10 because it had Blanchard, and I mean, honestly, who can disagree with that? Anyways, this doesn't mean there weren't negatives, and trust me, there were certainly a lot of negatives from the community about this map. There were a lot of comments giving the map a 4 out of 10 rating, which obviously is pretty bad for the map, and I mean, it was a pretty unanimous opinion by a lot of people on Reddit. I did see some people saying that it was a little better at a 6 out of 10, stating that they could appreciate the map because of the fact it was a simple map that wasn't meant to be anything crazy. But that was it for the launch of this game. A lot of positives and a good amount of negatives, but people were definitely at least enjoying this game for the time being. But it would not be long until the first DLC for this game, Citadel Day More, because for the first time ever, a DLC would be releasing before the end of the year in December with a brand new Zombies map. However, it wasn't just the fact that this map would be releasing so soon, because when this gameplay trailer dropped for this map, the positive reception was literally through the roof. In comments under the trailer, I saw people saying things like, "Now this is what a Zombies map should look like," or "Words cannot describe the joy I had watching this trailer." I mean, you guys can go look for yourself, because every single comment here was positive. It was unreal. I saw literally 0 negative comments on the trailer, and everyone was extremely excited for the swords, with a bunch of people saying that it was like Der Eisendrache. And well, when the map released, oh my lord, it was an enormous success. I saw this Reddit post by Migsy saying that he absolutely loved the map and the castle vibes it had, even saying it reminded him of the Black Ops 1 through BO3 days. In comments under the post, I saw people like this guy saying that he really enjoyed it and found it awesome that Zombies was actually getting support compared to the other modes. In numerous first attempt videos, people on YouTube were absolutely going insane, with Forcer saying the map lived up to the hype and this guy saying it was amazing. I even saw Hammy Boy saying that it was everything he had hoped for and more, which was extremely impressive for this map. I mean, YouTubers like Mr. Raffle Waffles were getting on the gaming charts for YouTube during this time, which is unheard of for the modern Zombies scene. However, although this map was fantastic with a great boss fight, problems were still certainly present, and one of the main complaints was with the newer wonder weapons, because people were claiming that they were either too balanced or that they were just mediocre in general. I saw some people saying that the map was okay, but that it just got boring quickly, and others saying that it was too small and dark. Overall though, it was certainly a success despite these negative comments, because I promise you guys, it was nuts. People were putting this map in their top 10s because of how good they thought it was at launch. So with this momentum, Zombies was looking good, but something unfortunate would begin to happen as the new year began. People were noticing a slowing of content drops, but that was quickly silenced with the announcement of The Tomb, which would be releasing near the end of January for Black Ops 6. From the trailer, people were seemingly excited. People were saying that they were doing well with Zombies, that the Pack-a-Punch camo was sick, and the ice staff returning was a nice touch. However, The Tomb would release, and unfortunately, despite the trailer making it look cool, a lot of negativity was present here. I saw people like this guy saying that the size of the map felt underwhelming to him and that he wasn't necessarily thrilled from the map. I saw this comment saying that the map was okay and that he found the ice staff underwhelming, giving it a 4 out of 10. It's crazy, but from everyone I saw, the best way to describe this map was, well, disappointing, and for each and every person, it wasn't necessarily for the same things. Some people complained about the size of the map, some people complained about the nostalgia bait that was attempting to carry it, and others were seeing how much the voice acting had been stripped from the game entirely. In reviews by people like Expert Fusion, the main issue he found was certainly the reuse of boss enemies, as this map did feature the Shock Mimic, which was an enemy from Modern Warfare Zombies, but was also alongside the Amalgam and the Vermin, which of course was present in Citadel Day More and Terminus as well. The few positives that this map had was the golden armor plates, which once again returned from Modern Warfare Zombies, but made the gameplay experience just that little bit better, and some people liked the Easter egg as well. However, Black Ops 6 wasn't looking too good, but it was all up to the next DLC to change the pace of this game. And of course, that next DLC would be with Shattered Veil, the second map that would take place within a couple miles of the original Liberty Falls in the mansion that we saw in the intro intro to that map. Now, for the trailer, it seemed like people were excited. The reveal of Double Tap was a huge selling point for this map for a lot of people, and I even saw sweaty mobs saying that it finally felt like zombies. The weird thing about this map though was that it was just like Liberty Falls in the sense that it was split right down the middle when it came out. Some people liked it, others were just simply not a fan of it. For instance, if I looked in the comment sections of YouTube videos talking about their attempts and impressions on the map, I saw people saying that this map was a W, or that this was their favorite zombies map in Black Ops 6. However, when I took to Reddit to see the first impressions of the general community outside of YouTube, I saw people like Callum saying that it was okay and definitely better than the Tomb, but that the maps just felt like they played the same, or that the movement and graphics just make the game bland and similar to Warzone. So, from what I could pull together and remember, I think that Shattervale was a respected map at its launch by the hardcore community, including myself, especially because of the boss fight. However, for others who were already not a fan of Black Ops 6, it just catalyzed their feelings towards it. So now the ending to Black Ops 6 was upon us. We got this epic cinematic at the end of Shattervale that saw us walking towards the towers to fight Sam, and overall the community sentiment around this map was relatively high. And when the trailer released, people seemed to be relatively excited once again. People like Helter Skelter were saying things like this is a zombies map, or Devin saying that they cooked. When the map came out though, it honestly was not anything too special, especially for the finale. People just seemed to not be the biggest fan, saying that it was another facility map or that it felt like a bunch of rooms connected by fast travels. However, people were a huge fan of the boss fights in this game. That's right, boss fights, because for the first time in Zombies history, you could choose which boss you wanted to fight. The concept was most certainly interesting and had never been done before. However, the main issue came with the Richthofen fight, as many found it to be so extremely difficult to a point that it felt unfair to a good majority of the people, similar to how Ashes of the Damned was at the launch. On top of this, of course, though, we got the craziest reveal in Zombies history with the return of our OG crew at the end of this Easter egg, and while this was received pretty mixed by the community. A lot of people hated it because they thought that Treyarch would completely mess up their stories, and well, with Black Ops 7, I am happy to report that that didn't really happen. But of course, that would be for another video in the future when Black Ops 7 is all said and done, but with that, that's all I've got. Now, there is one more thing that I think is relatively important, which was LTMs, as this was the first round-based experience to really go heavy into these, so I'm just gonna quickly run through the really important ones. Red light, green light, probably the worst mode we have ever gotten in Zombies history. It's legitimately some of the most uninspired gameplay I have ever experienced. It's very clear this was only put in the game to promote Squid Games. Grief, the return of one of the most underrated Zombies modes was certainly met with a lot of excitement, but unfortunately, bugs, broken metas, and a relatively slow and long gameplay loop made this extremely boring to me after a couple playthroughs. Also, no private matches was diabolical. Cranked, terrible. Team Cranked, terrible with more people. Starting Room, this was honestly a pretty fun LTM. They acknowledged an old community challenge, and it was a nice change of pace gameplay wise. Jingle Hells and that Halloween LTM, they were okay, but never necessarily built too much on the previous gameplay. I did like the redesigns of Liberty Falls though. Alright, so as many of you noticed, there was a year gap between the release of Black Ops 2 and Advanced Warfare, which was odd as there was a game there, of course, known as COD Ghosts. Call of Duty Ghosts was coming off the extreme success of Black Ops 2 in the previous year, which arguably was one of the most prominent games in the entire history of Call of Duty as a whole. Black Ops 2 was much more than a game. It was a cultural revolution that brought so many new people to the game and established numerous YouTube channels that still thrive on Call of Duty content to this day. So as you could probably imagine, the pressure to perform and create a game that was at least up to par in terms of Black Ops 2 was weighing heavy on the developers of Call of Duty Ghosts, especially since it was scheduled to release literally right after the lifecycle of Black Ops 2 following the final DLC of the game in August. However, while the pressure was certainly still on, this game did have one advantage that separated it from literally every other Call of Duty in the history of the series, because Call of Duty Ghosts would be the first Call of Duty game to release for the next generation Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But that was yet to be announced, because in the earliest discussion post I saw about this, surprisingly, I saw people saying things like, quote, yet another game I won't be buying, or another one. This was honestly pretty surprising for me to see. However, these people's feelings were actually pretty respectable, and they honestly reflect where we are currently with Call of Duty. Despite how good Black Ops 2 was for a lot of people, if you look all the way back to World at War in 2008, 2008, up to this point in 2013, people had seen a Call of Duty release for literally every single year following World at War. This constant release of Call of Duty for a lot of people was leading to intense fatigue for the franchise as a whole, which is very representative of how Black Ops 7 is currently performing because of how much people are honestly getting tired of the games getting released one after the other, especially since they are within the same subgenre. But even past that, the developer for Call of Duty Ghosts was Infinity Ward, which previously had made Modern Warfare 3 back in 2011 that was met with some positives but a lot more criticism from the community. However, for those who were actually interested in the game to a certain degree, I saw some unique theories being tossed around. For instance, Eggman here thought that since this game mode was called Ghosts, that it, well, would feature actual ghosts instead of a zombies mode, and that he theorized goblins would be next. While this is pretty funny to look back on now, people genuinely were confused with the title of the game, as obviously it was much different compared to every other Call of Duty before it, implying it could reach really far in creativity, which is something people were not the biggest fan of. But yeah, negativity was a big thing here. So many people were saying that they weren't going to be buying the game, and to my surprise at least, there were a lot of people saying that they didn't enjoy Infinity Ward games because they didn't have bot support. I mean, I guess I never really thought about that before, but honestly, you know what, sweats existed back then too, so maybe bots was the way to go. But putting these opinions aside, this game was coming whether people wanted it to or not, and out of nowhere, in the middle of Black Ops 2's lifecycle, a reveal teaser would drop on the 1st of May in 2013. This video was very unique. It showed a bunch of people from different time periods wearing like warrior masks or something like that, until this dude revealed his cool little ghost mask or whatever. In the comment sections, after all this negativity on the discussion boards, you would assume it would be widely negative, right? And well, you would be surprised to see that, yeah, it was a lot of negativity. I mean, I spent some time looking for comments from the time period, and the first one I came across was this one by Aussie Gamer, who wrote an entire essay as to how Call of Duty was a terrible game, with this little hashtag at the end here. There was this guy saying that there were people who thought before they bought the game, and the dislikes on this video at the time were said to be through the roof, and it's honestly just pretty unfortunate. I will say though, there were still a substantial amount of people saying things like, my brother pre-ordered it yesterday, or I can't wait till it comes out. But 20 days after this, on May 21st, 2013, an official reveal trailer for Call of Duty Ghosts would drop that would see honestly just more of the same from the teaser. People like Elite were saying that they were not impressed and that they would rather buy Battlefield 4, which was additionally another conflicting factor in this equation. But I mean, of course, since it was the reveal of a new Call of Duty, no matter how much fatigue there is or how much people hated the idea of another Call of Duty, there will always be people excited. But the bottom line was that Black Ops 2 was finishing up its life cycle, and directly afterwards people had something to somewhat look forward to after its release, and all they had to do was wait. But then suddenly, a couple months after these teasers and a couple weeks before the release of the game, something would drop, and that something would be the trailer for a game mode known as Extinction. And well, yeah, for those who were saying Call of Duty was going to be bonkers with their releases this time, they were right. For the first time ever, aliens would be in Call of Duty, featuring in their own third mode for the new release of this game. And well, surprisingly, people were actually extremely excited about this. I saw people in discussion board posts saying that they might actually get the game now, and this dude saying that he never got into zombies but would love the idea of aliens. I was pretty shocked to see this, in all honesty, because as we discussed way in the beginning of this video, a main criticism towards this game was that it was speculated to diverge away from the realism Call of Duty had, well, kind of gone for, but here the whole idea of aliens was nowhere near grounded, and people were so excited for it. I even saw Ice Weasel saying, sorry zombies fans, but Extinction looks a million times more fun, which I personally thought was just insane. And hey, when I went to look in the comments of this video, I saw this guy saying that the trailer gave him a tingly feeling in his arms. You know, honestly, I don't really even know if that's necessarily a good or bad thing, but hey, he got something from this trailer. But with that, people had no idea how the gameplay worked, and they would just have to wait for the release. Call of Duty Ghosts would officially release on November 5th, 2013, and with it, of course, this brand new Extinction mode. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm probably going to assume that you know how Extinction works, but since at the time this was being compared to the Zombies mode, there are some pretty significant distinctions. For starters, Zombies at the time was strictly an infinite round-based mode. However, Extinction took more of a focus on the objective route, tasking the player in the first map, Point of Contact, to destroy all the little alien hives around the area with this drill. It introduced a whole loadout system, skill system, and overall more of an in-depth customization option compared to Zombies, and oh yeah, the aliens were quite literally on crack. Anyways, with all that being said, how did people like this mode and the new map, Point of Contact? Well, people were absolutely loving it. I saw discussion board posts like this one from Blocktopus saying that it was so much better than Zombies, and this guy's saying that it was actually really fun, and this guy's saying that Extinction is a blast. I saw Darkstar saying that it was an absolute blast with his friends. This guy wrote a whole paragraph essentially saying how he liked Extinction's focus on pure objectives compared to Zombies, and Pinky was saying it was awesome and even comparing it to the firefight mode from Halo, which let me just add is one of my favorite game modes ever. But guys, I'm just gonna say it, and you might have to prepare yourselves for this statement, but Point of Contact genuinely might be the map that I have seen in this entire series to have the most positive reaction from nearly everybody. Yeah, it's a pretty insane statistic to be completely honest, but from what I can see, it's true. So many people were posting about Extinction, including people that still exist on the scene today, such as Noah J456 and Mr. Dalek JD, and it's safe to say the enjoyment of this mode was skyrocketing. Now, that doesn't mean there was no criticism, and a big one that I saw from people playing the game was that for some reason in solo, there was no pause button. That sounds like another game we're familiar with, right? Anyways, with this positive mindset, let's move into the next map, Nightfall. In comments under the trailer for this map, I saw people like Cameron saying he was really looking forward to playing the map. This guy saying it looked awesome, and this guy saying he couldn't wait. I mean, I even saw this dude saying it gave him goosebumps, so I mean, this trailer must have hit hard for a lot of people. Interestingly though, this is where I begin to see the Zombies lovers peek through the blinds a bit, with this comment saying that he wanted this to be Black Ops 3 Zombies instead of an alien mode, which is interesting as this whole time I've been seeing constant comments talking about how much better this mode was compared to Zombies. Anyways, when this map came out, it was once again brought with some pretty good positivity. I wouldn't necessarily say as much as the launch because that just cannot be beat, but it was very healthy. The main comparison from this map to Point of Contact was that Nightfall was much harder than Point of Contact, which either was a positive or a negative depending on who you were. On one hand, there were people like Valis who was saying that he really liked Nightfall because of how strategic you had to be while playing it, but on the other hand, there were people like Master Miner who was saying that he would have preferred it to be a little easier. And there were others in comment sections under a review by 2Pro for Your Games saying that it was fun but was not worth the $15 for the map. So with all that being said, this map was received positively, however the quality of the map was being questioned for its price tag, so it could get a little rocky moving forward. The next map to release would be known as Mayday, and this one was extremely unique for the time. The map was set in the middle of the sea, which I thought was pretty cool, and in the trailer people were agreeing with my sentiment, saying how surprised they were to see a Kraken boss on this map, and this guy saying that Extinction was so underrated, and this guy's saying but that Kraken though. When this map released, I saw a little more positive reception to this than Nightfall, mainly because, you guessed it, it was easier than Nightfall. I saw a lot of people saying that it was a fantastic map or that it was good because they added a bunch of new ideas, and even that Mayday was their favorite map. I will say though, there were comments like this one saying that Extinction wasn't a mode worth paying for because after you beat it there was just no reason to go back, or this guy's saying that it wasn't DLC but just a load of paywalls, which is somewhat understandable. But honestly, there wasn't too much to report. People generally found it interesting, but I did notice that the gameplay was getting stale for people because it was locked behind paid DLC. But let's move on to the fourth map here, Awakening. Now, a common complaint with Mayday was that since it was set on a ship, it had a boring atmosphere. However, this map completely reversed this. But interestingly, this was the first Ghost map to not get its own dedicated trailer, at least as far as I know, 2.0 and was subject to the overall DLC trailer release for the entire game as a whole. There weren't a lot of comments about the map, however I did find this pretty funny one saying I don't even know if Call of Duty is Call of Duty, which honestly is pretty fair because just look at this map. When this map came out, it was clear that this was easily one of, if not the hardest map in the entire game, with people like Seek and Destroy saying it was the toughest Extinction level so far. A lot of people were not very happy with the difficulty either. I saw this dude saying that the Mammoth was a mix of his 2 least favorite enemies in the game, which is honestly pretty understandable, but there were positives for sure. There were people like Will saying it was an awesome map, and this dude said it was the best map ever, so yeah. Overall, while I personally think this was one of the best maps in the game aesthetically and just creatively, it wasn't the most popular, but this would all lead to the finale with Exodus. So compared to the beauty we had with Awakening, we got this for the last map. I mean, this map is pretty ugly, I'm not gonna lie, and honestly, no wonder they didn't make a proper trailer for this map because my goodness is it a stark difference. When this map came out, people clearly were actually kind of enjoying it. A lot of people really seemed to like the ending of the map, which was seen with comments by Davion and Dougie, and the map itself seemed to be pretty fun for the majority of people. I saw this deleted comment on Reddit saying how they thought it was a great way to end Extinction, and that while they were disappointed with the lack of a huge boss, they liked it nonetheless, putting it as their second favorite. I did see some people saying that the last battle was disappointing though, which I found to be pretty interesting because some people loved it and others like this guy said that he just hated it. But guys, that's really about it for Extinction. Extinction was an extremely interesting take on a third mode for Call of Duty outside of the zombies that have been established by Treyarch. And as much as this diverges away from zombies conceptually, I actually really love this mode. I spent some time playing this mode for this video, and overall I found it to be a lot more fun than I remember, and it was a pretty decent experience for what it was. Was it the best? No, but what made it so awesome was that it was unique, and that is much more than some of the new stuff gives us nowadays. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts on Extinction down below, and don't forget to join my new Discord server. But with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.